Yeah, good morning to you. This is the Newsroom show. Nice to be with you on the final day of November 2016. I'm with Elvis Presley. Morning to Elvis.
Morning, Squire. How are you?
Oh, very good. Had an interesting morning, but I'll tell you about that off air a little bit later. Of course, Kendall Hamad is also with us on the sports tech, standing by. But today we've got an interesting developments. We're looking at the launch of a major study to test the efficiency of a vaccine to prevent HIV infection. So our question of the day relates to that. What are your hopes for the HIV vaccines trial that starts today here in South Africa? But Elvis, we're also running a poll.
Well, that'll be announced today, but let's take a look at our poll that we're going to run for you today, looking at the NEC that happened. Were you satisfied by the outcomes of the African National Congress's NEC? That's the question we posed to you on the poll. So far, 147 votes, 87% are saying no. Well, I wonder why 13% are saying yes. Well, you can keep them coming, and we'll read them as we continue. You can also put a comment on that on our Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom.
Well, shortly we'll have some analysis about the outcomes and then the way forward for the ruling party here in South Africa. But first, let's take a look at our top stories.
South Africa will today start a groundbreaking HIV vaccine trial that will test the effectiveness of a vaccine to prevent HIV. President Jacob Zuma praises Fidel Castro's role in the liberation of Africa against colonialism. And Brazil to begin with the investigations into the air crash that killed over 70 people and Brazil's Chapecoense soccer team. Those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you.
Gentlemen, good morning. It's not so good for the fans of the Chapecoense team or the Brazilians, and I'll tell you what, we're going to be covering it in the sports as well later on, just to bring you messages of condolences from around the world about that bereavement that Brazil and the football world has experienced. Talking of football, this is what we've got for you in the sports today.
No, she's not. Blasted straight through. And it's 1-0 to Nigeria.
Try as they might, Banyana failed to advance past Nigeria in the AFCON semi-final last night as they fought a sublime free kick in the 57th minute.
Unfortunately, it didn't go our way. We created opportunities and once again had 2 shots cleared of the line, and on another day it would have gone in.
And in the Absa Premiership, Cape Town City FC come from behind to hold Kaizer Chiefs to a 1-1 draw at the FNB Stadium.
Now the turn. Oh, goal from Silva. Took a massive deflection. He's got 2 in 2 games against Kaizer Chiefs.
And condolences continue to pour in from around the world for the families of the Chapecoense team that perished in the air crash yesterday. Bringing you these and other stories later on at 10:40 in more detail. For now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. With World AIDS Day on the 1st of December tomorrow, South Africa will today launch a vaccine trial against HIV. The study, called HVTN 702, aims to enroll just under 5,500 South Africans in 15 cities across 5 provinces. The largest and most advanced HIV trial ever in South Africa will focus on sexually active volunteers aged between 18 and 35. More than 6.8 million South Africans live with HIV/AIDS, one of the highest rates in the world. The trial is spearheaded by 4 South African scientists. Results of the vaccine study are expected in late 2020. Now, as you know, South Africa will commence today with the landmark HIV vaccine study. That study involves to test the efficacy of a vaccine to prevent HIV infection. Now, the project will be launched at identified sites in Soshanguve, north of Pretoria, in Durban and Cape Town. Some of the first of 5,400 volunteers will be enrolled in the study, will receive their initial injections. SABC's Lopang Alamo joins us from one of the identified sites. Let's find out. Lopang, a very good morning to you and welcome.
A very good morning to you too.
Lopang, tell us where you are and what is happening there.
We are here in Tshwane at in Soshanguve. We are at the Setšhaba Research Center, where it is one of the 3 sites where the launch for the HIV child vaccination will be launched. With me, I've got Dr. Moko, one of the 4 South African researchers and professors who are partaking in this initiative, and she'll give us more information as to exactly what this HVTN 702, as they call it, is all about. Dr. Moko, thank you so much for your time. HVTN, the HIV Vaccination Trial Network 702, what exactly is that?
Okay, 702 is a large-scale vaccine study which we are launching here today, and it will be launched in around 15 clinical research sites in South Africa. The 702 trial is a safety and efficacy trial that we will be conducting across all these research sites.
I understand that we're looking at the age group, all the 5,400 volunteers and the age group between 18 and 35. They're at high risk. How effective is this age group in seeing if the vaccination will be able to help prevent new HIV infections?
Okay, that's a very good question. I think from the data that we know that we have about 1,000 new HIV infections in South Africa on a daily basis. And we know that most of these new infections are concentrated in the youth. So such a vaccine study would be important for our youth out there. And we are hoping that this vaccine study would show tremendous results to save the lives of millions of youth that get infected on a daily basis.
I understand that this is not the first trial to take place. The Thai trial, which happened like 7 years ago, proved 31%. It only stopped about 31% new HIV infections. How different is the study going to be from that one that we saw 7 years ago?
The Thai trial was a tremendous large-scale efficacy trial that was conducted in Thailand that involved around 16,000 volunteers. And as you say, the efficacy there was 31%. This was the first HIV vaccine trial to show some sort of efficacy. So what has been done after that is to build on the results of the Thai trial and to adapt the vaccine that was used in the Thai trial to make it more specific for the South African subtype of HIV strains that circulate here, and to try and make the vaccines that were used in the Thai trial stronger and more durable so that we can get higher efficacy.
I understand that we have to wait 3 to 4 years before we actually see if the vaccination is successful or not.
Yes, we do have to wait about 4 years. This is a long journey and a journey of hope for us. I think everybody should know that vaccine research takes a lot of time. There's years and years of developing a vaccine until we can find one that is safe and effective to use in the human population.
My question to you, if this vaccination proves to be successful, where does this put South Africa on the health map in the world?
All right, this puts South Africa in the forefront of HIV research. As we have said, this is the only country that is conducting this HIV vaccine study. And if the vaccine is found to work, South Africa is in the prime position to lead the fight against HIV.
Just my last question now. What then, if it is successful, how are people going to be able to get the vaccination? Is it going to be free? Will it be available for everyone? Could you give us a hint as to, if it is successful, where to from there?
Okay, where to from there? I think after the 4 years, we will be analyzing the data, and the data will be publicized. And after that, there is going to be a series of regulatory consultations where we would consult with various regulatory bodies in support of possible licensure of the vaccine. And then there would be then further discussions around possible rollout of the vaccine.
All right, thank you so much for your time. That was Dr. Moko Malahleha explaining to us what the HIV Vaccination Trial Network 702 is all about. She indicated that the age group 18 to 35 are at most risk for new HIV infections, and as we know, South Africa's one is ranked one of the highest for HIV infections. So we just have to wait and see if the vaccination will work. It's not going to be an easy task for them. It is going to take about 4 years before we actually find out if the trial was successful or not. But we'll definitely keep you updated on any new information. But for now, it is back to you in studio.
That was our reporter there, Lopang Alamo. We'll keep you abreast of the situation across the country, especially in Durban and Cape Town, where some of the trials are also going to be held. And tomorrow, of course, 1st of December, International World AIDS Day. We'll give you a lot of analysis around the issue. And, of course, you have to stay tuned to your favorite channel, Channel 404. This is Newsroom. The question we are posing to you today is, what are your hopes for that HIV vaccine trial? Do you think that it will be worthwhile in the end? Let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. Let's continue now. President Jacob Zuma is among international leaders who have addressed a huge rally in the Cuban capital, Havana, in honor of the fallen President Fidel Castro. The iconic leader died Friday at the age of 90. Now, for the past few days, Cubans have been filling past a stage bearing the urn of Castro's ashes. They've also signed a pledge to the principles of his revolution. For many, especially in Latin America and Africa, Castro was a symbol of resistance to imperialism, having ousted a US-backed dictator and a champion of the poor. Others, including many in the large Cuban exile community in Miami, have condemned him as a tyrant who jailed opponents and ruined the economy through socialism. African leaders, including Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe and President Jacob Zuma, addressed the crowd in Havana, paying homage to the revolutionary leader.
We join the progressive forces of the world in mourning and celebrating the life of this renowned internationalist and anti-imperialist who selflessly supported the struggles of the oppressed and exploited.
Nos sumamos a las fuerzas progresistas de todo el mundo al guardar luto y a celebrar la vida de este internacionalista reconocido y de este antiimperialista, quien respaldó de manera desinteresada las luchas de los oprimidos y los explotados.
The passing of Comrade Fidel is a painful loss for South African people.
La muerte del compañero Fidel es una pérdida dolorosa para el pueblo de Sudáfrica.
He stood with us in solidarity, supporting our struggle, including the international campaign to isolate the apartheid regime.
Él estuvo al lado nuestro en solidaridad y respaldó la lucha, incluida la campaña internacional para aislar al régimen del apartheid.
We knew that we could rely on Cuba, a trusted friend and ally of the oppressed.
Sabíamos que podíamos confiar en Cuba, un amigo y un aliado de los oprimidos.
Significantly, the deep and undying special relationship between Cuba and South Africa was cemented by the blood of heroic Cuban soldiers who paid the supreme sacrifice for their belief in anti-imperialism, freedom and justice.
La relación especial, profunda e imperecedera entre Cuba y Sudáfrica se cimentó con la sangre de los soldados cubanos heroicos, quienes pagaron el sacrificio supremo por su convicción en el antiimperialismo, la libertad y la justicia.
The mission was also to liberate Namibia and boost the liberation efforts in South Africa between 1987 and 1988.
Esta misión comprendió también liberar a Namibia y fomentar los esfuerzos de liberación en Sudáfrica entre 1987 y 1988.
It was this engagement that led to the epic Battle of Cuito Cunaval in 1988, in which the Cubans forced the South African racist apartheid regiment into a humiliating and devastating retreat.
That was President Jacob Zuma in Cuba. Family members of some of the 71 people killed when a plane carrying the Brazilian soccer team, Chapecoense, crashed in Colombia gathered at the team's Arena Conda on November the 29th as they wept together. Our family members were joined by the fans of the club who came out to mourn together at the team's home. Medical doctors and mental health specialists were on hand at the club to attend to family members of the victims. The plane slammed into a mountainside near Medellin on Monday night as the team flew to face Atlético Nacional for the Copa Sudamérica, which is South America's equivalent to the Europa League. Now, in addition to players, the coaches and staff, 21 journalists had been on board the plane to cover the match. Now, the African National Congress President Jacob Zuma is staying put. This is the message from the African National Congress NEC after the weekend's calls for him to resign. Now, the calls were made by some members of the NEC at its meeting over the weekend. The ANC has also reiterated that those who called for the president's head will not be purged.
Following robust, honest and candid and times difficult discussion, the NEC did not support the call for the president to step down.
The announcement many have been waiting for. The ANC meeting, which is the highest decision-making body, had a heated debate on the future of its president. The reasons for the call: the parties lost in the August local elections, the Nkandla saga, and the recent release of the state of capture report by the former public protector.
So there was no vote of no confidence. There was a call for the president to step down. Now, that call ultimately was not acceded to.
And an assurance to NEC members who led the charge.
It is debated by ministers and non-ministers. Everybody talks on this matter. Almost everybody in that NEC spoke on this matter, I can tell you that. So to limit it to ministers is actually bordering on mischief.
A message to opposition parties which plan to call for another motion of no confidence against the president.
Bring it on if the EFF wants to. Let's see what happens. There are no ghosts that we're chasing around. We believe that every enemy of our revolution has a right to do whatever they wish to do to destabilize or try to destabilize the revolution, but we are equally determined for them not to succeed.
Turning to the rating agencies, the party says it will not try to appease them.
They must rate us on the work we do that we think are in the best interest of the country.
With that out of the way, the party will now focus on preparations for the January 8 statement, which outlines the program of action for the year.
The ANC also dismissed reports that some ministers were planning to resign en masse after failing to convince President Zuma to resign as president of the country. The ANC described the reports as corridor talk. Muntlanyani Dipoko, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Yeah, that's been the big story in South Africa for, well, since the weekend really into this week. We put up a poll today. Of course, it was a much anticipated meeting, or press conference rather, was held yesterday. We're asking you, were you satisfied with what you heard after the ANC NEC meeting? Now, at the moment, we've got just over 200 votes in. 86% of our viewers are not satisfied about the outcomes of the NEC meeting, and I wonder why. What do you think? Let's go over to overseas with Dumisani Hlope. I think they will come up with a few reasons as to why.
Of course, we'll find out, because for now, let's take a look at the analysis on the outcomes of that last ANC NEC meeting. We are joined in studio by Dumisani Hlope, who is a political analyst. Mr. Hlope, a very good morning to you and welcome. We asked the question to our viewers. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I think because the meeting itself was a very heightened and a critical one. It doesn't happen in a very long time for comrades in the top structure of the organization to call upon their own kind to step down. So I think the people are quite justified to have expected a more robust and more detailed kind of a report back from the NEC through Kwete Mantashe. But on the side of Kwetemantaj, his task was to show that the ANC is united. Let's not read too much into what happened. The organization is still tight. So he had to do what he had to do, and I think he did it fairly well.
Is that the indication, though, that the ANC came out more united, or the NEC, for that matter, came out more united?
Not necessarily. I don't think they are any closer to unity than they were before they went into that meeting. And I think this kind of differences will continue, for two reasons. I mean, this is part of party political struggles, power struggles within the party itself, which is quite common, in democracies, particularly when there's no common enemy. So in the past, during apartheid, it was easy for the ANC to unite because they had a common enemy, which was apartheid. But then once that goes, you find that the differences and class differences begin to manifest themselves within the political party itself. So this is normal in terms of intra-party political, power contestation. It's something that happens. So I'm not surprised. In fact, I foresee a whole lot of more contestations before December 2019. So let's brace ourselves for more of these types of conversations.
Was this a cordial request from the NEC member, or was this a motion carried by the NEC?
Well, many people call this an ambush. Personally, I think this was well orchestrated, was well planned, and I think anyone who follows politics should have known that something was bound to happen in this NEC, because a few days earlier, you find that Castro came up and said that, look, we are moving for Cyril Ramaphosa. Some members of the MK veterans, they distanced themselves from their own leader. The ANC veterans and stalwarts, they met the ANC and expressed their dissatisfaction. Let's keep in mind, by the way, that some of these veterans are actually NEC members. So there has been a groundswell. I mean, Jackson Mthembu, a few weeks earlier, has expressed an opinion that the entire NSA must step down. So these things have been brewing. So when this thing, matured at the NEC level, I don't understand why it came as a shock to many, because the indications were there in the run-up.
Now, Mr. Mantaja said that the ANC will now focus on unity of the party going forward. Do you think that that could be attained?
It has become a cliche. It's become a rhetoric. I mean, they've been saying that since the day of Polokwane. So I'm not convinced that anything drastically different will happen. What they need to do is to manage their internal differences smarter, but I don't think they are able to erase them.
Was this an unprecedented move, or was it perhaps, if I can recall, perhaps the second time after Thabo Mbeki was recalled the first time?
There's a big difference, because when then President Mbeki was recalled, he was not the ANC president. So this is what makes this one even bigger, because what they are calling for was the resignation of a sitting ANC president. At that time, President Mbeki was a state president, so it was much easier to, to deal, with this situation. I just think broadly that the ANC has also fallen into a personalization type of contestation. Because this contestation that you see with the ANC, it has nothing to do with the slow pace of land redistribution, or the unemployment rate at 27%, or the quest to provide a free and quality education. So or who's best suited to drive the National Development Plan vision. These, to a greater extent, these are elite political contestations. Although there are instances where President Zuma has faltered quite greatly on governance issues.
Has this victory perhaps cemented the president's presidency until 2017?
No, it's not. It's not a victory for those that supported the president. Actually, it's more of a victory for those that moved for the motion of confidence. Because for one, they gathered enough strength to present to put this thing on the agenda. I mean, you wouldn't have thought of these things a year ago. The fact that they gathered enough courage to put it on the agenda, it's a score on their point. Secondly, the fact that they were surprised by the number of people that actually came in support of the motion. So that's another plus for them. Thirdly, the fact that there was no vote which has taken place. It also means that even the pro-Zuma camp was not sure that it was going to win. And fourthly, the fact that it was disputed whether they should go a secret ballot or not. So you can't say that there's a side that won. But what the ANC ought to consider is that they are at a stage in the life of the ANC where it's not the voting that is going to save the ANC from itself. It's to think strategically and act strategically.
Now, you did say moving forward there will be a lot more contestations, but what is the likely implications of this latest move now by the NEC members moving forward?
Well, I foresee tensions, particularly within cabinet. I mean, it's going to be very difficult, to work, inside, that cabinet. I think there are going to be tensions, there are going to be suspicions, but if the ministers resign en masse, they will somehow cripple, the state apparatus. And I think it won't be a good idea for the president to also, let's say, reshuffle cabinet because he will be accused of purging. So it's a very tight situation. This is one of those moments that requires astute leadership, to come to the fore.
Mr. Hlophe, as usual, thank you so much for your time and joining us here. Thank you. That was Dumisani Hlophe, political analyst, giving us his take on the NEC. We'd like to find out from you what's your take on it, on a poll that we're asking you the question. So let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle at the SABC Newsroom, as well as SABC News Facebook page. What do you make of the outcomes of the NEC, and are you satisfied with what came out of that? Let's go over to Eben.
Yeah, thank you, Elvis. A little bit later, of course, I'll be talking to Dr. Somadori Fikeni, taking the analysis a little bit further. It'll be interesting what his take was after that. And, of course, you can contribute with us and to us on our Facebook page, on our Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. That's where you can interact with us and tell us, what do you think? But right now, let's go on to all the social media. What's media pages? What's happening right now? Of course, the one that's got the world in tears is the plane crash, where 76 people are now confirmed dead, including the entire Brazilian football team Chapecoense, when the plane they were in crash landed outside Medellin in Colombia. The football fraternity and the family of those who died are in mourning right now. They say it was like a punch in the stomach for members of the team who remained behind. Here's a photo taken before takeoff. Football teams around the world are gathering for a moment's silence. And, of course, the likes of Real Madrid and FC Barcelona have been paying their respects. Now, in the hometown of Chapeco, a local tower was also lit up. There you see it. Of course, back home, in South Africa, people are talking about the ANC NEC outcomes. The National Executive Committee, of course, did not call for the president to step down. This after a motion for him motion of no confidence and a motion for him to be removed was tabled. Then let's not forget about what's happening right now. It's 16 days of activism. The other hashtag, of course, is Count Me In. Men have been included in this year's conversation as more focus has been placed on their views and their role in society. Raise awareness in your community, and for those who've been abused or are being mistreated right now, find the strength to speak out. Now, according to Wikigender, in 77 countries around the world, legislation on domestic violence is non-existent or inadequate. Then, downtown Johannesburg, Maboneng, to be exact, has hung clothing lines across with women's underwear to show support for abused women and to raise awareness for the ongoing campaigns. There you see a wonderful picture from the Maboneng precinct. Then, on a lighter note, while Americans have started using drones to deliver pizza, Japan, well, they're training reindeer to deliver your dinner. Wonder what St. Nicholas or Father Christmas would have to say about that one. Now, yesterday, of course, we asked you, we conducted a poll where we were talking about the gender violence campaigns, whether they're working. It seems the numbers are not coming down. We had a shocking statistic yesterday with how commonplace it is. Let's take a look at how you voted and what you said. Are we taking a look at how you voted? This one from the New South Africa Democratic SA says, I love Newsroom. Thanks for the awesome show, guys. Thank you very much. It's always nice to get the props in your lifetime, isn't it? This one from Shafana says, no, because there are people still abusing women and children's rights. Sinitemba Mango says, grassroots level, it doesn't reach. Example, in Nyanga, Sharpeville, Pika and Guyani, talking, of course, about places where we've seen issues with regards to the abuse of women and children. Siwa Piwe says no, because this campaign isn't done to all villages and citizens. There are people who are still abusing women and children's rights, I think is what Siwa Piwe is trying to tell us. That's what the tale of the tape tells us right now. Of course, our picture of the day now. Let's take a look at our pick of the day. This one comes from the Bolivian Yank. And, well, it's captioned, beautiful. Of course, we've seen this horrific accident. The hashtag there, Chapo Coenze fans paying tribute to their fallen team in their stadium. What a wonderful gesture. Could you imagine a team like Kaizer Chiefs losing all their players and 20 of South Africa's top sports journalists in one crash? I think sometimes you have to bring it home in order for you to try and realize what happened. Yeah, I mentioned Kaizer Chiefs because Kaizer Chiefs, we all know, are going through a bit of difficulty. They haven't managed to win 1 in 7 now. Let's move on to our comment of the day. This one comes from Fawad Rehman. Now, Fawad, who says, rest in peace. Prayers to Brazil and also prayers to the families that lost their loved ones in the Chapecoense plane crash. Hashtag there, football. Sad, but that's the way it is. Now, let's take a look at what's happening in the courts. We start in Johannesburg. Of course, judgment is expected in the sexual assault, rape and fraud case against model agency boss Dawie de Villiers in the High Court sitting at the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court. Now, de Villiers is the founder of Modelling South Africa. He's accused of rape, sexual assault, indecent assault and the possession of child pornography as well as fraud and theft. Now, the charges date back as far as 2010. Well, still in Johannesburg, the Constitutional Court is expected to rule today concerning the interpretation of the word spouse. Two men had been living together since 2003 in a permanent same-sex life partnership. They've been equally supporting each other financially. Now, one of them died in 2015 before they could solemnize or register their permanent same-sex life partnership under the Civil Union Act here in South Africa. Now, the deceased passed away without ever concluding a will. Now, the surviving spouse inherited the partner's estate, and he was affirmed as the rightful heir of the deceased estate by the High Court in Pretoria. The deceased brother, in turn, who was the executor of the late brother's estate, was also removed as the executor by the court. He then challenged the matter in the Constitutional Court, and the ruling is expected this morning. It should be a landmark ruling, and we'll keep you updated about this very interesting story and the landmark case that's before the court. Now, I can tell you, Dr. Zamadoda Fikeni is with us. He's standing by in our studios in the capital, in Pretoria, to talk to me shortly about what happened yesterday and what he sees going forward. It should be interesting to get this learned man's opinion after a short break.
What was, the week like in terms of CITES?
I saw there was a news insert about there being genetically engineered sort of rhino horns that have been introduced now. And then that has sort of now been rejected. They're saying that it's sort of going to promote poaching as per se.
The concern that's been raised by law enforcement in that particular regard has been that how do you distinguish between the original and the fake?
Yes.
Because it's going to make it difficult to police.
The rhino horn is the same quality as the nail. If you want something from the rhino horn, just cut your nail and do whatever. What was most striking for me was how the pangolin came into the picture. That was interesting for me because a few years ago in Zimbabwe, if you found a pangolin and you handed it over, you would have an audience with the president.
Wow.
Yeah, and you would be given a certain amount of money. And
wow.
Once that program started, almost every week there was somebody who was getting an audience with the president.
Welcome back. You're still at Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, to continue with the NEC outcomes, I just want to put up this poll again, just to show you where we are. You guys are voting this morning. 215 of you have been voting. We're asking you, were you satisfied by the outcomes of the ANC NEC, of course, press conference and the entire weekend? 86% say no, we are not satisfied by the outcomes of yesterday's press conference and generally what came out of the weekend's discussions. Now, Dr. Zamadora Fikeni is with us. He is, well, one of the most renowned political analysts in the country, to put it like that. Good morning to you, Dr. Fikeni. Thanks for being with us on Newsroom once again.
Good morning to you and good morning to your viewers.
Dr. Fikeni, how do you view what came out yesterday, specifically with regards to what was spoken about running into next year's elective conference? The voting didn't happen over the weekend, but surely the voting will happen there. What's your expectation of the voting there, and do you think things will change?
Well, I do think that out of yesterday, what we learned is that ANC was looking in its internal dynamics and all possibilities, and they seem to have erred on the side of trying to forge some unity, albeit some of the problems internally, and work towards a consultative conference, which I think was a major concession, because remember, those supporting the president were quite suspicious of the early consultative conference because they felt that it would be used as a base of attacking the president or launching a campaign against him. To this extent, I do think that realizing that a bruising battle where the president would be refusing to leave and fight back, and also the fact that he would still be the president of the party until the Congress is called, would have been a lot more damaging. But of course, the poll you showed there shows that the public expectation is different from the internal ANC dimensions.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Your expectation, though, from the elective conference, we know there's been an agreement and there's been discussions around the consultative conference with the veterans. That was last week and the week before. But this elective conference, it suddenly becomes so important within where the ANC is and the direction that it's going to follow. What is your expectation of that elective conference? And do you see a change of face going into 2019?
Well, I think it all depends on what happens in 2017 leading to the consultative and policy conference. That in itself, I think, will tell us whether ANC takes the route of healing unity and compromise, wherein you no longer have the slates, but you rather put together the best team available to recover the ANC from a progressive decline. Or else it could be a damaging, bruising, divisive, battle going to the December elective conference, where the winners will take all and the losers will be humiliated and set aside. If that be the case, you can almost guarantee that it no longer matters who they elect in December, because they will not have the president in 2019 if they do not correct with a sense of urgency the internal challenges. But if they do manage to correct, ANC has one advantage. Most of its supporters simply stay at home. They do not transfer to other parties. So they could still energize their base, recover some of the lost ground.
Let's talk about purging. Of course, we've heard that no one will be purged after what happened over the weekend, and that, of course, remains to be seen in the weeks and months to come. But if that is the case, does that show a movement or an organization that is busy self-correcting and that is showing incredible unity in very difficult circumstances?
Well, I do think that at this stage, the leaders of the different factions are not yet convinced in their heart that unity and embracing each other is the route. So the mutual suspicion will lead to a low-intensity behind-the-scenes wars for positioning, wars for the battle of the leadership of the ANC. How that is managed will be crucial, because if it is not managed, then the retributions out of yesterday or the weekend's meeting will be the sin, or even trying to undermine each other. And during that process, it may impact on the governance of the country, on the confidence in investing in the country, and on the reputation of the country at large.
Dr. Fikeni, I want to talk quickly about the role of the media, because in South Africa we've got something quite unique that's going on in the media. We live in the time of embedded journalists, journalists who are open about their allegiance and who you can see in their reportage and so forth, who they support. In what has happened over the last weekend and the kind of reportage that you've seen, were you surprised with the kind of information or speculations that were being dished out left, right and center?
Well, I do think that the media was quite correct in spotting and reporting the fact that there was a motion of calling for the president to step down. That one they got correct. But the sense of sensation that the president was about to be recalled was rather far-fetched, as many of us were indicating that the president is still having the numbers within the NEC, and as such, because the president had signaled that he was not willing to voluntarily step down without fighting, ANC, even those who are not happy with him, would rather compromise, knowing that they are left with little more than 12 months to go before the next ANC elective conference. That in itself guaranteed that he would still be the president of the country and the ANC. But his power is confined, he is wounded, he is vulnerable in a sense, so he's more likely going to go into a deeper survival mode, or even fighting back, which might even take risk of trying to hit back at his opponents.
In conclusion, Dr. Fikeni, the next 12 months, this is the last NEC meeting and the last sort of call of business almost for the year. What do you see the next 6 months, 12 months look like for the ANC?
Well, I do think that we ought to focus on the January 8th statement and the Lekgotla to see what is happening there, whether the current unity is holding. And the next one will be the court cases facing the president, including the state of capture, recommendations, how that goes, because this battle will be fought on the legal front, on the public opinion front, and inside the ANC structures. How that happens is going to be very important, but it's likely that Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma and Cyril Ramaphosa will be the leading candidates. As to whether unity will bring them together into one team, it's another thing.
Dr. Fikeni, thank you very much for coming in today, making time to come and talk to us about developments within and around the NEC meeting of the last 4 or 5 days or so. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That's Dr. Sumadona Fikeni coming to us live from Pretoria, of course, one of the foremost political analysts here in South Africa. Worked with him on the last couple of elections, actually. Now, of course, we have been conducting that poll on, well, the outcomes, and we've been asking you, are you satisfied by the outcomes of, well, the press conference, or call it the transparency after this weekend's interesting developments? Were you satisfied? 202 votes are in right now. 86% say, no, we are not satisfied, to be honest. We're not satisfied by what came out. We want to know more. Well, sometimes you can't know it all. That's just the nature of what we do. This one is, let's take a couple of tweets. This one from Tonique Sonique. He says, whoever tries to keep their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life will preserve it. Some scripture there talking about the ANC NEC. Tebogo Mochadi says, Newsroom, yes, President Zuma must complete his term and viva ANC. That one from... Then, I admire Advocate Tully, says, my fellow people, we were all duped in 94 into a settlement plan which is not sustainable. There's no freedom here, period. Interesting. He goes on and says, let's address the single biggest problem in the country, which is inequality of access to the economy and to land. Yes, that is it. Gideon says, I'm still asking myself why politicians are concerned of the ANC NEC and its political decisions, even on conferences. Those are your tweets. This one from Munati says, no, I was not, but I didn't expect much from the ANC NEC, who are protecting President Zuma, says Munati. Keep your tweets coming. This is an interactive show. This is what Newsroom is all about interacting with you and about you sending us views and us taking those views to experts and getting your views across as well. Let's now take a quick look, a roundup from around the world. Let's have a look at what is happening elsewhere in the world. Often we can be very insular in South Africa. We'll start in Europe. The Times reports that social media giants should block children from sharing explicit images to help curb Britain's sexting crisis. This, according to the Health Secretary in that country. Still in the UK, the Independent says a plane carrying 77 people, including a squad of a top-flight Brazilian football team, has crashed in the mountains outside the Colombian city of Medellin. 71 people, well, 76 people are now confirmed dead. Then in Australia, the Australian reports that a group with alleged links to gangland guns for hire hit squads were amongst those arrested in lighting police scoop designed to halt Sydney's underworld war. Those are some of your headlines from elsewhere in the world. Let's now take a short break. Remember, what are your hopes for the HIV vaccine trial that started here in South Africa today? It's going to last quite a bit. Tomorrow's World AIDS Day. Send us your tweet to @SABC Newsroom. We'd love to hear what you're hoping for. Will we see a vaccine in our lifetime? That is the ultimate question. We'll be with you after a short break.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
Police found powerful military explosives when they swooped on a house in Springs on the Gauteng.
Some of the weapons seized at this house included rocket-propelled grenades, rifles, and even rounds of ammunition.
All military explosives that we found that you cannot obtain a commission.
The weapons found at the house not only had the potential to cause major damage to property, but they also put many lives at risk.
I could have lost any one of my family members, or most of my family members.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, it's the last day of December. Tomorrow is World AIDS Day. And today here in South Africa, we've started, well, vaccine trials, HIV vaccine trials. We were live at the venue where it's taking place, but we've been asking you the question, what is your hopes? What are your hopes for this HIV vaccine trial that is set to start today? And some say it could last as long as 4 years, but we might have a vaccine. We might have a vaccine at the end of all of it. Let's take a look at what you guys are telling us with regards to this question of the day. This one from T-Soul Music. He says, Newsroom, I think they should give it a try. Trying is better than nothing. It might save millions of people's lives. Yeah, my friend, that's exactly what we are hoping for. Tavanda Chivese says the HIV vaccine trial does increase HIV risk. The vaccine itself is a harmless product that just simulates HIV. Tawanda. Tamio says, new HIV vaccine to be tested in South Africa. Of course, the one is HVTN 702. 5,400 people aim to be enrolled in this trial. Very interesting one. Dominic Ngeleka says, pray that this HVTN 702 HIV prevention vaccine trial people are embarking on to try works. We all hope it works. Vuyo says, the RB144 regimen reported in 2009 was 31.2% effective in preventing new infections. HVTN 702 has built on that foundation. Let's hope, Vuyo, we can get close to 100%, because ultimately that's what the world needs. That's what South Africa needs, of course. We need our people to stop dying of this dreaded disease. But now for some good news. Yes, former world number one. Some call him the greatest of all time. Others say not. I say yes. Tiger Woods, sidelined for 15 months. To back surgery, knee surgery, and so forth. Tomorrow, he returns to competitive golf. Kendall?
You're extremely ecstatic about this. And you know what? And you, and along with a whole host of golfing fans across the world. You mentioned something when you spoke a little earlier about how a whole lot of other players are talking about how golf is not the same without him.
You can break it down to many different aspects, financial, technical, even the fact that, you know, Nike brands pulling out of the game, Adidas is pulling out of the game, TaylorMade and the like in financial difficulty. Why, you have to ask yourself? Well, since Tiger's gone out of the game, the numbers have dropped so vastly in America that top brands are in financial difficulty. Because of that. This is the impact this man has had on the sport. The greatest impact I think anyone has had on any sport in the history of sport is what Tiger Woods has done with the game of golf.
Those are big words. Those are massive words. And I think maybe one looking at the numbers would probably like back up exactly what you said. I was chatting to someone earlier on. I was like, you know, Tiger Woods is like the Muhammad Ali of golf. Not like a Lionel Messi, because Lionel Messi's got a Ronaldo who he competes against. Tiger Woods was competing against no one.
Yeah, because nobody could compete against him. Mentally, he was so far ahead everyone else. But only now are we starting to learn about the human face of him. You know, you only get to see the human face of a supreme athlete once they get into a little bit of difficulty, like all of us. And you see that we're all human beings. We all make mistakes. We all can be tempted into doing the wrong things and so forth. For me, it's just, you know, the effect that he's had. I'll make an analogy to you. In 1997, Nick Price was world number one.
97.
97. Nick Price was world number one. Tiger, at that point, there were 3 or 4 golf millionaires in the world.
Right.
3 or 4.
Only 3 or 4?
Only 3 or 4.
Wow.
The rest of them were earning a good living, but they weren't multi-millionaire superstars. Right now, all of the top 100 golfers in the world are all superstars with private jets.
Oh, because
who brought
of Tiger
that?
Woods.
Tiger Woods brought that into the game. Tiger Woods brought modern money into the modern game. And people have to recognize the contribution that this man has made to the game. It's easy to criticize somebody if you don't like the look of him, which is often the case in this world, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you know what? Kudos to Tiger Woods for what he's done, because, I mean, going into an elite sport, looking the way he does, coming from the background that he does, and actually doing it, and actually taking it by the bootstraps and taking it to a whole new level, new strata. Fantastic stuff by this man. Look, 15 months was laid off, back surgery, back injuries, and it seems like he's back on form. He's had a few practice swings, and he's feeling strong, and he's quite happy about the fact that he's going to be out there performing in front of his fans tomorrow.
You know, Well, you know, it was very nice, Kendall. The great thing was the response of his fellow professionals, because all the youngsters who are now top players, who watch Tiger play, they all are just saying they're so happy to have him back, just to watch him practice, because they were so inspired by this guy. To watch him practice, to watch him play, to have him around, it's like having your grandfather around a little bit. I think that's the kind of sense that young golfers have with this guy.
Now, we'll definitely be making sure that we bring this all to you as it happens, as it unfolds over the next few days, so you can see the great man in action himself.
Let's go over to Seminari with today's weather.
Hello there, welcome from the weather desk. It is going to be quite a hot day in South Africa today, and possibilities of veld fires also coming through because of those hot and dry conditions towards the Northern Cape, some parts of the Northwest, and definitely towards the Western Cape province. Temperatures there could be going as high as just around 42 degrees in some places. Madagascar is also expected to be quite rainy. We're expecting up to 60% chance of showers towards Antananarivo and over the northern parts. Now, lesser chance of rainfall expected here in South Africa towards Polokwane, KwaZulu-Natal, as well as over much of the Eastern Cape province, or the northern half of the Eastern Cape province, that is. The R is at 36. There are those temperatures I did mention. Very hot. Upington 43, 33 towards Polokwane, and Mbombela also at 33 degrees. But nice and cool weather is expected just along the coastal parts here. It's looking a lot better in terms of temperatures along those parts. But for the rest, northern parts, central regions are expected to be extremely hot. So please take extra caution along those parts. Please look after yourself. These really hot temperatures could be very dangerous for our health. Serowe is at 35 degrees, 33 towards Bulawayo, and Windhoek on the opposite side is at 33. Also hot and dry weather towards Namibia's capital, and along the coast of Namibia it is expected to be quite dry along those parts. A place that is almost never dry is just the central parts of the DRC and also over the northern parts of Zambia. It is expected to be quite rainy today up until Wednesday. In fact, stronger chances, up until Thursday rather, stronger chance of rainfall are expected over the central part. As you move towards the west as well, do expect rainy weather there. And temperatures are looking pretty good there as well. Not as hot as what you're seeing in South Africa. It's nice and cool towards Kigali, Kampala, Nairobi, and even Kinshasa, sitting at 29 degrees. Brazzaville is at 28. Banjul is quite hot at 38 degrees. And again, dry weather is expected for North Africa. In fact, it hardly rains here. There's a bit of moisture and a bit of rain expected towards Damascus and Baghdad. Temperatures dropping significantly for Baghdad at 13 degrees, 18 for Damascus, but it gets warmer towards Luxor, Al Jouf, and even towards Khartoum. Temperatures going as high as 36 degrees. Sanaa is at 23, 24 for Riyadh. Partly cloudy skies and a bit of rain along the west coast, but it's moving further and further away. So the bit of rain that they received during their wet periods are sort of going away now as the dry spell is kicking in. Hot weather for Niamey as well as in N'Djamena, but much cooler towards Tunisia. Take a look at the capital, just around 17 degrees. In fact, Tripoli also expected to be quite cool. Algiers, Rabat, those are just along the lower 20s, and 18 degrees is expected along the central parts. That is it for the weather. Do stay tuned, there'll be more later.
What is a national anthem and why do we need national anthems?
The national anthem becomes an instrument to foster social cohesion, identity, to create a sense of identity of a country.
It does happen that people feel that they cannot commit to what the national anthem does.
Unity is not formed from the sky. People don't just despise the national anthem, but it is because of certain things that are actually happening. The issue of languages, for instance. The issue of apartheid statues and monuments.
Give me that paperwork.
Where is your
Give me that paperwork.
Where is your paperwork?
Like this, I'm everything. I don't know what's going on. Sorry, I'm locked up.
This is not fair. Center Basizan. Not fair.
Ukuputse rent ka 200. Hape se kupula ka 200. O re ngwana, o iwana. 150, 150 plus. Another 150.
I'm just the one to lock you out.
Yes,
I'm
that's
the
one to
keys.
lock them out.
You are starting gangsterism.
No!
Welcome back. It's just gone 10 o'clock. You're watching the Newsroom show here on SABC News. Rene West is with us until midday today, bringing you all the latest news from all around the world. Of course, today we're looking at this major study to test the efficiency of a vaccine to prevent HIV infection, Rene. And we've been asking this question, and people are really, they're really interacting with it, aren't they?
Yes, so what we've been asking this morning is, what are your hopes for the HIV vaccine trial?
Of course, the trial starts today. Let's just take a quick look at what you're tweeting us right now. What are you talking to us about? This one from IG. He says,
it's better if we try to see if it does work. This could stop and help many lives from HIV.
Millions of lives. Unati says, I don't have hope that it will work, but we will see when time goes. Yes, it'll take 4 years, but...
T-Sol says, I think they should give it a try. Trying is better than nothing. It might save millions of people's lives. Quite right there.
Absolutely. Tammy O says, new HIV vaccine to be tested in South Africa. 5,400 people aim to be enrolled in the trial. So it'll be an extensive trial, and it's expected to last for 4 years, as I pointed out.
And Dominica says, pray that this HVTN702 HIV prevention vaccine trial people are embarking on to try works. He hopes that this trial works.
Well, we're all hoping that the trial works. Of course, tomorrow's World AIDS Day. It's a day where we think about this devastating disease, especially here in South Africa, that has caused so much misery for our nation. Tomorrow's World AIDS Day. Tell us what your expectation on World AIDS and what shall we do that is different with regards to this. But, of course, in politics, it's been a very busy week for the ANC. We've been running a poll since this morning after the outcomes of this robust ambush are some of the words that have come out of this ANC NEC meeting. Rene, we've got 229 votes in right now.
Yes, and it seems that 86 people are saying no, they are not satisfied with the outcomes of the ANC NEC meeting.
Yeah, keep it coming. We love your interaction. That's what it's about for us here on Newsroom. Of course, there's a lot of stories developing. Let's go to the news desk with Rene to give us that update.
The groundbreaking HIV vaccine trial that will test the effectiveness of a vaccine to prevent HIV is currently underway all over the country. And President Jacob Zuma praises Fidel Castro's role in the liberation of Africa against colonialism. And Brazil to begin with the investigations into the air crash that killed over 70 people and Brazil's Chapecoense soccer team. Now, before we get into that news, let's go to Kendall to find out what's happening in the sports.
Renee, good morning. Obviously, we're going to be also covering this in a sport as well. I mean, that tragedy that the Chapecoense fans...
I think sometimes people don't realize what really happened. It was a big professional team like SuperSport United, the Chiefs, Orlando Pirates. The entire first team wiped out on their way, in South Africa's context, to go play in the African Champions League.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of those things that you don't expect to happen. You hear about it in movies, and it really does happen. And over 70 people dead. Something that is unheard of, unwanted, but it did happen. And we'll be covering it in more detail a little later today. This is what else is coming up in the sports.
No, she's not. Blasted straight through. And it's 1-0 to Nigeria.
Try as they might, Banyana failed to advance past Nigeria in the AFCON semi-final last night as they fought to a sublime free kick in the 57th minute.
Unfortunately, it didn't go our way. We created opportunities and once again had 2 shots cleared of the line, and on another day it would have gone in.
And in the upset Premiership, Cape Town City FC come from behind to hold Kaizer Chiefs to a 1-0 draw in the FNB Stadium.
Now the turn. Oh, goal from Summit. Took a massive deflection. He's got 2 in 2 games against Kaizer Chiefs.
And, of course, condolences continue to pour in from around the world for the families of the Chapecoense team that perished in the air crash yesterday. All these stories and more I'll have in more detail at 10:40 or so. But for now, it is back to Renee, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. With World AIDS Day on the 1st of December, that's tomorrow, South Africa will today launch a vaccine trial against HIV. The study, called HVTN 702, aims to enroll just under 5,500 South Africans in 15 cities across 5 provinces. Now, the largest and most advanced HIV trial ever in South Africa will focus on sexually active volunteers aged between 18 and 35. More than 6.8 million South Africans live with HIV, one of the highest rates in the world. Now, the trial is spearheaded by 4 South African scientists. The results of the vaccine study are expected in the late 2020s. President Jacob Zuma is among international leaders who have addressed a huge rally in the Cuban capital, Havana, in honor of Fidel Castro. The iconic leader died last Friday at the age of 90. For the past few days, Cubans have been filing past the stage bearing the urn of Castro's ashes. They have also signed a pledge to the principles of his revolution. For many, especially in Latin America and Africa, Castro was a symbol of resistance to imperialism, having ousted a US-backed dictator and a champion of the poor. Others, including many in the large Cuban exile community in Miami, have condemned him as a tyrant who jailed opponents and ruined the economy through socialism. African leaders, including Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe and President Jacob Zuma, addressed the crowd in Havana, paying homage to the revolutionary leader.
We join the progressive forces of the world in mourning and celebrating the life of this renowned internationalist and anti-imperialist who selflessly supported the struggles of the oppressed and exploited.
Nos sumamos a las fuerzas progresistas de todo el mundo al guardar luto y a celebrar la vida de este internacionalista reconocido y de este antiimperialista, quien respaldó de manera desinteresada las luchas de los oprimidos y los explotados.
The passing of Comrade Fidel is a painful loss for South African people.
La muerte del compañero Fidel es una pérdida dolorosa para el pueblo de Sudáfrica.
He stood with us in solidarity, supporting our struggle, including the international campaign to isolate the apartheid regime.
Él estuvo al lado nuestro en solidaridad y respaldó la lucha, incluida la campaña internacional para aislar al régimen del apartheid.
We knew that we could rely on Cuba, a trusted friend and ally of the oppressed.
Sabíamos que podíamos confiar en Cuba, un amigo y un aliado de los oprimidos.
Significantly, the deep and undying special relationship between Cuba and South Africa was cemented by the blood of heroic Cuban soldiers who paid the supreme sacrifice for their belief in anti-imperialism, freedom, and justice.
La relación especial, profunda e imperecedera entre Cuba y Sudáfrica se cimentó con la sangre de los soldados cubanos heroicos, quienes pagaron el sacrificio supremo por su convicción en el antiimperialismo, la libertad y la justicia.
The mission was also to liberate Namibia and boost the liberation efforts in South Africa between 1987 and 1988.
Esta misión comprendió también liberar a Namibia y fomentar los esfuerzos de liberación en Sudáfrica entre 1987 y 1988.
It was this engagement that led to the epic Battle of Cuito Cunaval in 1988, in which the Cubans forced the South African racist apartheid regiment into a humiliating and devastating retreat.
South African Communist Party, together with the Friends of Cuba Society, have meanwhile remembered the life of Fidel Castro in Cape Town. This happened last night. Now, for many in South Africa, Castro symbolizes anti-imperialism and freedom for all.
Fidel Castro, described as a symbol of resistance. Through his actions and his writings, he has significantly influenced the politics of various individuals and groups across the world. His supporters laud him as a champion of socialism. Conversely, critics view him as a dictator whose administration oversaw human rights abuses and the exodus of a large number of Cubans. However, his unwavering support for the freedom of South Africa and his stance against the apartheid regime will ensure that his name is recorded in the country's history books.
A man of tremendous ideological integrity, a socialist, a believer in freedom and anti-racist, and above all an internationalist.
He is an outstanding revolutionary that contributed immensely to our own struggle. But the most important thing for us is to note that more than 2,000 Cuban soldiers died in Angola fighting against apartheid regime which had tried to invade Angola.
Organizations such as Friends of Cuba are guided by the ideals of Castro, nurturing the international solidarity between South Africa and Cuba.
And such a poor country being able to do so much indicates to us as bystanders that it is a perfect example of a more equal society.
The Deputy President is also expected to commemorate the life of Fidel Castro in Cape Town. Nomawetu Solwandle, SABC News, Cape Town.
Family members of some of the 71 people killed when a plane carrying Brazilian soccer team Chapecoense crashed in Colombia gathered at the team's Arena Conda on November the 29th as they wept together. Family members were joined by fans of the club who came out to mourn together at the team's home. Medical doctors and mental health specialists were on hand at the club to attend to family members of the victims. The plane slammed into a mountainside near Medellin on Monday night as the team flew to face Atlético Nacional for the Copa Sudamericana, which is South America's equivalent of the Europa League. In addition to players, coaches and staff, 21 journalists had been on board the plane to cover that match. Coming back home, ANC President Jacob Zuma is staying put. This is the message from the ANC NEC after the weekend's calls for him to resign. The calls were made by some of the members of the NEC at its meeting over the weekend. The ANC has also reiterated that those who called for President's head will not be purged.
Following robust, honest and candid and times difficult discussion, the NEC did not support the call for the President to step down.
The announcement many have been waiting for. The ANC meeting, which is the highest decision-making body, had a heated debate on the future of its president. The reasons for the call: the parties lost in the August local elections, the Nkandla saga, and the recent release of the state of capture report by the former public protector.
So there was no vote of no confidence. There was a call for the president to step down. Now, that call ultimately was not acceded to.
And an assurance to NEC members who led the charge.
It is debated by ministers and non-ministers. Everybody talks on this matter. Almost everybody in that NEC spoke on this matter, I can tell you that. So to limit it to ministers is actually bordering on mischief.
A message to opposition parties which plan to call for another motion of no confidence against the president.
Bring it on if the EFF wants to. Let's see what happens. There are no ghosts that we're chasing around. We believe that every enemy of our revolution has a right to do whatever they wish to do to destabilize or try to destabilize the revolution, but we are equally determined for them not to succeed.
Turning to the rating agencies, the party says it will not try to appease them.
They must rate us on the work we do that we think are in the best interest of the country.
With that out of the way, the party will now focus on preparations for the January 8 statement, which outlines the program of action for the year.
The ANC also dismissed reports that some ministers were planning to resign en masse after failing to convince President Zuma to resign as president of the country. The ANC described the reports as corridor talk. Muntlanyani Dipoko, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Police Minister Nadine Nhleko refused to be drawn into the ongoing tensions between him and IPED Executive Director Robert McBride. He says suggestions that he's out to get McBride do not make sense. Nhleko addressed members of the parliamentary media yesterday to discuss various concerns within his ministry. One of these reasons being recent newspaper reports that he unlawfully signed over 30 million rand to a marketing company whose head he has also been alleged to have romantic links with. Nhleko denied that he had ever approved the multi-million rand payment. He has asked the public protector to investigate the matter and reported the matter to the president. However, his fractured relationship with IPED boss McBride drew more interest. McBride could face a possible parliamentary inquiry after Nhleko submitted a letter to the Police Portfolio Committee requesting that his conduct be reviewed. However, Nhleko did not give clarity on why he requested the inquiry.
If there are allegations of transgressions of whatever nature, for an example, all what the minister has got to do is to approach Parliament, report to Parliament what has transpired, or what would have transpired, and then it is for Parliament to then decide how it would want to deal with a matter of such a nature. Now, as for the criminal charges, that's for the National Prosecuting Authority. It has absolutely nothing to do with me.
Gauteng Education NEC Panyaza Sufi will today brief the media on the outcomes of an investigation into alleged racial discrimination at Pretoria High School for Girls. In August, black pupils protested against the school's code of conduct, which imposed restrictions on how they could wear their hair. Now, the girls said school rules forbade African hairstyles such as afros, bantu knots, dreadlocks and braids. Now, according to the school's 36-page code of conduct, pupils could wear braids, cornrows or dreadlocks, but only if they were a maximum of 10 millimeters in diameter. All hair had to be brushed, neatly tied back if long enough, and kept out of the face. Moving a little bit further afield, the first event of the Russian-South African Cultural Festival in Moscow was a resounding success, attracting a full house on the first night. The concert featured the popular Mzansi Youth Choir, the talented Moving in Dance, and the international star Gloria Bosman. She showcased the love for music and the rhymes of African from pop to classical and even Kwaito. Now, our reporter Lerato Tipo filed this report.
From as early as 6 a.m., artists braced themselves against the snow and blistering cold conditions, excited to be part of the team that will showcase the very best in South African dance and music. It's a one-of-a-kind festival incorporating singers, choirs, dancers, and even guitarists.
I've always dreamt of coming to this country specifically. I've always loved Russia and its history. Everything is just fantastic.
I've always wanted to represent my country in music, and I think at this point, this is the best platform ever for all of us.
After hours of rehearsals, mic checks and sound checks, the musicians, dancers and opera singers are inside this theatrical hall, all fired up and ready to dazzle the audience in a once-in-a-lifetime cultural experience called I Am South African. The Mzansi Youth Choir performing, bringing the African beat to Russia. Their melodic beat kept the audience on their feet, belting out well-known songs such as Dar Kom Di Alibama and the famous Mere Makeba click song. The trip is already a life-changing experience for youngsters in the traveling group. Then the dancers took the stage, telling the South African story with traditional and classical dance.
I want them to take the richness of Mzansi, the excitement, the culture that we as the Rainbow Nation have.
The show aims to showcase and celebrate the many different cultures and languages making up the South African tapestry. The merger of indigenous instruments from the Xhosa people combined with the Russian orchestra made for an outstanding musical experience.
It's going to be opening up other avenues, trade relations between countries, tourism, and all those are dependent on culture, because first and foremost, you should know what language I use, I speak, and appreciate that. So that's going to be a very important and interesting journey.
The first leg of the Russian South African Cultural Festival in Moscow has come to an end. And now it's off to St. Petersburg. And if this shows anything go by, the audience there is going to be left captivated. Lerato Tipa, SABC News, Moscow.
Well, those are your top news stories for this hour. But as you know, we're speaking about the HIV vaccine trial that's beginning today. Of course, tomorrow is World AIDS Day. Isn't that right, Eben? Big news.
Massive news. I don't think sometimes people realise how important what is happening right now in South Africa, how important it is, not just for the future here, but for the entire planet. Of course, the vaccine trials are underway, have started, will last for 4 years or so. 5,400 people will be taking part in it. We're asking you this question on screen. What are your hopes for the HIV vaccine trials now? We've had quite a few comments come in. Let's have a look at what you guys are tweeting us. This one from IG, he says, Newsroom, it's better if we try to see if it does work. This could stop and help many lives from HIV. Bunati says, I don't have hope that it will work, but we will see when the time comes, I think, is what Bunati's trying to say there. T-Cell Music says, Newsroom, think they should give it a try. Trying is better than nothing. It might save millions of people's lives. And this one from Tammy, she says, the new HIV vaccine to be tested in South Africa, HVTN 702, 5,400 people aim to be enrolled in the trial. That's what we are looking at right now as the HIV trials get underway here in South Africa today.
After months of uncertainty, scientists have finally confirmed that a weak La Niña has arrived, and it is likely to last into the early months of 2017. Historically, this phenomenon brings heavy rains to the region, and along with the rains often comes widespread flooding and a higher risk of diseases, including cholera and malaria. It is almost exactly 2 years ago, if you can recall, this month, when Southern Africa was hit by a deluge of rain that caused rivers to overflow and widespread flooding across the region. As the rains continued to fall, it became clear by Christmas of 2014 that the situation would only get worse. Now, to talk to us about the weather patterns, we are joined by Oxfam Southern Africa, Dr. Tigera Chuguta, who is the Development Policy, Advocacy and Communication Specialist. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning.
First and foremostly, what is the effect of the La Niña on Southern Africa, and are we prepared?
So perhaps just to start at the top, the La Nina is the opposite of perhaps the more widely known El Nino phenomenon, which brings drought to the region. The La Nina is a result of the warming of sea surface temperatures, and that is often associated with a lot of rain in the region. As to whether we are prepared for it, I mean, the La Nina brings flooding, and as you said at the top, cholera and diseases. Currently, we've lost the window for preparedness. This is because agencies have been trying to deal with the drought in the region. What we need to do now is to perhaps make sure that communities are better able to cope and respond to these impacts that might follow.
And how would they be able to cope and be prepared for what's coming?
Well, that's a big challenge. That is because we are talking about a region that has suffered from the drought. So people really have lost a lot of their own assets to be able to absorb these shocks. What we need is for agencies and governments to ensure that there is adequate measures to ensure that if people do suffer from flooding, they can be resettled. To higher places where the flooding is not happening. People have access to medicines if these diseases come through, and people can be provided with food and other necessities.
As Oxfam, how do you assist these communities in Southern Africa?
So as Oxfam in Southern Africa, we work in 4 countries. One of the things, or a couple of the things that we've been doing is through food security interventions that includes providing people with food, doing cash transfers, providing people with money that they can use to buy whatever basic needs they need. Also providing people with food vouchers, so that's working with merchants where people can go and access food. Secondly, we also working to provide people with seeds and other inputs that may be needed for the upcoming rainy season. And lastly, we're doing public health education, so just making sure that people are aware how to react when these diseases do come about.
And Doctor, have you seen a difference over the years with Oxfam's participation with SADC?
There has been a difference, I must say. I think SADC is more open to engaging non-state actors now. There's still a challenge, though, in the fact that we are still not yet set up adequately to deal with these climate shocks, whether it's drought or it's floods. One of the key problems is that in this region, we don't often have these humanitarian type of disasters. So agencies are more kitted to respond to, the normal development work. And as we saw with the current drought, when it hit, agencies did not have the right capacity in terms of expertise to lead operational responses.
I just want to go back to preparedness. Is there perhaps enough work being done to perhaps establish an early warning system for the SADC region in order for us to be prepared?
Well, the region has always had, through its Climate Outlook Forum, a mechanism for being able to get early warning for some of these climate shocks. Unfortunately, that mechanism has been hunted by the poor quality of data. So that's data from the countries as well as information management systems that enable us to be able to make better decisions and to prepare better when we know that such things are coming.
When we talk about La Nina and El Nino, is this perhaps an indication that climate change is for real, that some people can actually, accept it, that is a reality? The new president-elect of the U.S. doesn't believe that, by the way.
Yeah, certainly. So La Nina and El Nino themselves are not scientifically linked with climate change. However, what we are noticing is that these phenomena, which are regular in their coming, are now coming with more, with more intensity. They're, so to say, supercharged by climate change. And so this is one amongst a number of, scientific evidence that really supports that climate change is real and climate change is already impacting us now.
As Oxfam, how are you going to be prepared for the coming La Nina?
So as Oxfam, what we are doing is obviously in the countries where we are present in the region, making sure that our programs are ready to supply, life-saving aid. So whether this is kits to purify water, if water is contaminated through flooding, so we've got kits that we are now pre-positioning to make sure that areas that are particularly hard to reach will have access to medicines, to food, should flooding occur due to this La Nina.
Doctor, thank you so much for joining us here in studio.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Now that was Dr. Tigera Chaguta, who is the Development Policy, Advocacy and Communication Specialist at Oxfam, Southern Africa.
It was bound to be an interesting debate with Donald and Hillary, him not even having bothered to prepare. So he was flying on instinct. And it didn't come across quite well. I'm starting a hashtag, medical fees must fall. There are many students who are protesting who are not necessarily violent. The students are saying the issue is how to implement, whereas the Commission's mandate is to look at
feasibility. Yeah. Among these countries, only South Africa allows same-sex marriages. Very concerning indeed, Prof.
Your sexual orientation does not demean your own humanity, doesn't make you less of a human being. That really is the essence.
Now, to continue with our discussion on the weather, El Nino and La Nina are complex weather patterns caused by variations in ocean temperatures in the equatorial Pacific. Now, it is believed that last year's El Nino is to blame for the increased temperatures and dry conditions throughout southern Africa. The La Nina, on the opposite hand, however, is responsible for slightly cooler weather with more rainfall than usual. Now, joining us today is Tietse Monare to tell us more about these phases. Good morning, Tietse.
Very good morning, Renee.
So now, briefly explain to us El Nino and La Nina, these concepts. A lot of people may not know the difference between the two. Can you explain that for us?
Yeah, that's what I'll try to do. In the simplest way, basically, the El Nino is sort of the big bad monster that comes up with severe weather conditions for both Southern Africa as well as the Latin American countries. And if you look at this image here at the background here, that's basically how it explains it. During a normal year, there's normal winds that push, water and everything else in its normal direction, and everything goes as normal. But during an El Nino year is when you see these warmer winds now pushing a lot of warmer water, ocean water, into the surface. So the sea surface temperatures then increases. And once that happens, that's when the havoc basically happens, because all these depend on the ocean water and basically the surface of it. Once it gets warm, that's when you get things like severe thunderstorms in other parts of the world and an extreme drought in other areas and higher temperatures, especially what you saw in South Africa at around October last year, going all the way till this year into March. And you also had serious drought conditions and the weather was just haywire. The North American regions had some serious storms. There was a blister of snowfalls in some places over New York. And then also you get monsoons and some seriously drastic impacts that you would see in Southeast Asia as well as in India. So that's basically what it is with El Nino. And La Nina is the complete opposite of that. And hopefully that's what we can get into and talk more about. The La Nina is basically when the environments are trying to cool itself back to normal after an El Nino. So during an El Nino, you'll get the sea surface getting getting really hot, and then La Nina is trying to get back to normal.
So is that the phase that we're in currently?
Yes. The thing is, the El Nino is still carrying on. It hasn't really moved out completely yet. That's why we're feeling these really hot temperatures now and then. I mean, we're going through a heat wave now. But yes, about 2-3 weeks ago, we experienced some serious rainfalls here in Gauteng, in much of South Africa, because of the effect of the La Nina coming in. Is that the reversal is now taking place. So we're getting cooler air back to its normal place. And it's a natural phenomenon. It does happen in a certain period, like 2 to 7 years. And then it's supposed to last between 9 and about 12 months or maybe even 2 years. So now the La Nina comes in and it's bringing these cooler conditions, bringing wetter conditions and rainy weather. And so that's basically what's happening now in South Africa.
Is it a bit dangerous, though, for these weather patterns to change quite quickly? Like we've seen these flash floods now, the tsunamis, that
absolutely.
warnings that are happening in Asia.
Yes, absolutely. That's what makes it so bad. And that's why when we couple it with climate change, it makes it even worse. Because with climate change comes things such as global warming. So the rest of the continent or of the planet actually is getting warmer. So when that happens, that means sea surface temperatures are going to get even higher. So we could get a period where El Niños now don't come between 2 to 7 years, maybe they come 2 to 3 years. So now the space in between is much shorter, meaning you're going to get severe thunderstorms or severe weather conditions in even more rapid frequencies, which is really, really bad and really, really dangerous, makes it very difficult to predict and makes it very difficult to sort of adapt and be ready for.
Is there any way that a country like South Africa can prepare for these changes? Can we expect further flash floods?
Yeah, well, if you think about it, El Niño and La Nina, they're not new. These events have been taking place for hundreds of years, and we basically know how long the breaks are in between and when they happen, and by now we know what the impacts are. So after an El Niño, guess what? There will be a La Nina. So there's no two ways about it. You can't say, maybe, maybe not. So if there's an El Nino, definitely prepare for a La Nina, even if it doesn't take place in its severity, but just prepare for it, because that's going to cost a country's GDP massively. If you think about the El Nino that took place yesterday, it dropped our crops here in South Africa or Southern Africa by almost 9 million tons. And we need crops to survive everywhere along the world. If you look at Asian countries where they depend on rice and rice paddies, if an El Nino hits and expecting something worse after that, then you prepare for it. Because, if you don't produce as much rice as you used to producing, then people are just going to starve. And when people starve, nobody's happy.
So now going into next year, what can we expect?
Now that's a bit of a tricky one because these things are checked in seasonal forecasts. So we look at what's going to happen between now and just about beginning of January, right? And we really are expecting some slightly cooler conditions and wetter than normal conditions in terms of rainfall and the amount that we have seen so far. We've been correct up until mid-November. So now there's a slight twist in that it's getting back to the hot conditions again. It's getting back to the drier conditions. So we're all just sitting and hoping that the actual forecast, the bigger picture, actually turns out to be correct. So what we're looking for is more rainfall that's going to be coming through between now and possibly mid-February. And then again, between February and about April, slightly getting cooler than what we're seeing now.
Now, we saw some strange weather phenomenon for South Africans, such as tornadoes. Now, we're not used to those.
Yes.
Can we expect that to continue next year?
Yeah. The thing with the weather is that it's really really hard to work with, actually. So you could say something like we do not get tornadoes as often as usual here in South Africa, which is very true. We shouldn't be getting tornadoes. But yes, they do happen. And yes, with the climate changing, it means things that were not happening in South Africa could happen, or things that were happening could happen in severe cases. So they can get even worse, like we're seeing with the drought. South Africa is quite a dry country, and what's happening, it's getting even drier. But now we're also being introduced to things such as tornadoes and
even snow in some parts of the country that didn't usually used to get snow.
Exactly. So that's basically what is happening now, is that a lot of these things, because of man-made climate change or man-made induced climate change, things are getting a little bit more unpredictable and they're getting a little more difficult to actually deal with, to adapt to. So that's what we should expect. Yes, anything can basically happen. Things are changing all over the world. It's not just South Africa. Things are changing all over the world. All we have to do is just do our best to save, preserve and conserve, and just hope for the best in terms of the weather.
Oh, thank you very much, Tietse, for joining us once again.
Thank you so much,
Of course, that is our weatherman, Tietse Monari, telling us more about the weather phenomenons that we've been seeing. But moving on to something a little bit more serious now as well, 16 days of activism is currently underway. Now, vice-chancellors of the country's top universities have been summoned by the Gender Commission of South Africa to explain how they plan to protect young women from the increasing rape culture at tertiary institutions. Now, the vice-chancellors of the universities of Wits, Cape Town, KwaZulu-Natal and Rhodes will appear before the Gender Commission's public investigative hearings today and tomorrow. Now, this follows a number of cases of rape and sexual abuse at tertiary institutions. But for more on the story, the Centre for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation is calling on governments to act to stop the rise in gender-based violence in South Africa. It urges the state to urgently commission a national GBV baseline study to determine the nature and extent of gender-based violence experiences across the country. Now, for more on this, we are joined by Nonhlanhla Sibanda, gender specialist at the Centre for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. A very good morning to you and thank you for being here.
Good morning.
So we are going through 16 days of activism, and we've been asking our viewers what they think, and if they think that these campaigns have been working. What are your views on this?
That's a very interesting question, and it takes us back to what we're calling for in our press statement, where we're saying that there is need for a baseline survey to tell us what the levels and extent of gender-based violence are in the country, because in actual fact, we do not know what the levels of, officially, we do not know what the levels of gender-based violence are in the country. There have been a number of self-reporting surveys that have been that have taken place in different communities, but we do not have a national study that can tell us what the actual levels of gender-based violence are, hence the need and the call for this nationwide baseline survey. That because once we have that, then we are in a position to be able to measure what our programs and interventions, whether they're really making any effect, because it's difficult when we don't really know what the scope and the extent of the problem actually is.
Now, we continue to hear this, that there's so many cases, rape cases, abuse cases, that are not being reported. And there's been a lot of calls for government. But yesterday, we also spoke to some specialists that were saying it actually starts in the home. What would you say to that?
Absolutely, I agree with that. It actually starts with the personal. It begins with you. It begins with me. It begins at the interpersonal level. It begins at how we relate with the next person, how I relate to my partner, how I relate within the home, within the context of my home. So one of the studies that the CSVR has done was to look at our own approach to how we deal with gender-based violence. And how we do that is that we start at the personal level, we move to the family, we move to the community, because it is out of the understanding that gender-based violence, there's a whole interplay of cultural, of community, of religious, of traditional factors that affect gender-based violence. So we need to then deal with the problem from all those different levels, but beginning with the personal and moving on to the broader areas of the work.
Now, there's been a call for vice-chancellors of many universities across the country to come together and to discuss these important issues. What do you think? Do you think this is the right route?
Definitely, because it's the different institutions that hold and either perpetuate patriarchy or gender inequalities. And we have seen over the past days, over the past couple of weeks, how academic institutions specifically are a place where rape culture continues to exist, where patriarchy is so embedded. So it is very important that institutions such as universities, schools, I would say, churches, religious institutions, traditional institutions, and local government all have a part to play. So it's important that this issue is dealt with at all these various institutions, at all these various structures structural levels, because if we need to deal with gender-based violence, not just at the superficial level or at just responding to an event when it has happened, but we need to deal with the structural causes of gender-based violence. And essentially, patriarchy exists and is perpetuated and is maintained through these institutions, and universities certainly need to be playing a part.
Now, this year, the theme seems to be more focused on involving the men in this conversation, and especially young boys. But how do we close the gap from the focus, or how do we shift the focus from women to men?
I think that at this point, it is still very important that we keep the focus on women, because we know prevalence tells us who is mostly affected by gender-based violence. It is still women. So it's important that our focus at this point in time still maintains that focus. But also at the same time, we need to understand that gender-based violence is not just a woman's issue, but it is an issue that affects everybody. It is an issue that affects children, the boys, the girls. So hence, in dealing with gender-based violence, and particularly male violence against women, it's important that we start dealing with it from the socialization level. So we're in the ways that we raise not just our girl children, but also in the ways that we raise our boy children. So there is a part for men to play, certainly, but I think at this point it is important that we do keep the focus and the investment in the violence that affects women. We're not saying that men are not abused, but I'm saying that because of the prevalence, I mean, the figures are telling us that women are mostly affected. And we, in a country where a woman is killed every 6 hours by an intimate partner, surely I think it's plausible enough that we keep our focus on violence against women.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you.
That, of course, was Nonhlanhla Sibanda, a gender specialist from the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. Well, it's time now to take a break, but Kendall will be with you shortly to give you a sports update.
Children's rights and health are a priority in the journey of good health.
All children should have access to adequate health care, not only curative but preventative as well.
How to identify ADHD on children.
ADHD is a childhood disorder which manifests with the symptoms of hyperactivity, impulsivity, and/or inattention.
Is breastfeeding still a vital nutrition to babies even today?
Breastfeeding for the first 6 months of life is absolutely crucial.
Catch Health Talk with Dr. Sello Mutawung every Saturday from 9 till 10 a.m.
Welcome back. As Renee said, I'm Kendall Malkamat and I've got your sports right here on Newsroom. Now we start our story with a hero's welcome. The South African cricket team came home to exactly that after a third consecutive victorious tour of Australia. The Proteas won the Test Series 2-1, only losing the pink ball test in Adelaide.
Sports fans jostled to get a glimpse of the team that put one over Australia in their own backyard. This on the back of having whitewashed the Aussies in the one-day international series played in South Africa in September and October.
Yeah, that's the thing. We get, I suppose, we get so high standards for ourselves that obviously all of us wanted to win 3-0, but I'm exceptionally happy to sit here as a series winner, 2-1. If you asked me to take 2-1 before the series, I would have bitten your whole arm off for that result. Yeah, it's an incredible achievement for us as a team, and yeah, on a personal note, it went pretty well as well. But to make history, to be the third team to do it, makes it even better.
Perhaps the biggest story of the tour outside of the victory was the ball tampering accusation. That will all hopefully be laid to rest soon.
I wasn't happy though the way it was handled. As mentioned with the question before, it's not just to accept things that come your way. If you feel, what's the word, not hard done by maybe, to challenge it, and I feel that I am in a position to challenge it. I didn't feel I was trying to do anything wrong. I was just trying to shine the ball, and obviously the ICC disagree, but maybe it's a good opportunity for us now to really relook at how the laws of the game exactly work.
The final test in Adelaide was a day-night, something foreign to the Proteas. Although that was the test they eventually lost, the players are positive about this new innovation.
The obvious thing is it's pretty new, and we weren't too sure what to expect. There was a lot of talk about the ball swinging a lot at night and moving around a lot at night. That wasn't the case because it was extremely cold. So I assume that when it heats up a bit, normally the ball swings when it's a bit warmer. So that didn't happen, but we did see that with a new ball, that's when you get wickets, and then it's a nice time to bat. And then obviously at night you can lose a few wickets again, but it's all positive.
Given the results of some of our other national teams in recent times, a victorious Proteas team is a shot in the arm for our passionate sports fans. The return from injury of star batsman A.B. de Villiers for the incoming Sri Lanka tour starting next month will only serve to bolster an already confident South Africa outfit. Nigelo Madala, SABC News, OR Tambo International.
Now, wheelchair tennis star Thando Hlatshwayo, South Africa's former world #2 junior, has passed away at the age of 20. This is news that came in just this morning. Hlatshwayo, who hails from Paul Petersburg in KwaZulu-Natal, lost her battle against meningitis early on Tuesday morning after a very short and surprising illness. Hlatshwayo took up wheelchair tennis in 2009, played her first tournament in April 2010 in East London, and just 2 years in the sport, she represented the country in the ITF Junior Cup Mechelen in Belgium. The 20-year-old, ever-smiling Hlatshwayo, also represented South Africa in Russia, Great Britain, Sri Lanka and Mauritius. May her soul rest in peace. Now we'll move on to other sporting stories, where South African women's soccer team coach Desiree Ellis is proud of her charges. This despite their semi-final loss to Nigeria in the 2016 Africa Women's Cup of Nations. Banyana suffered a disappointing 1-0 loss at the hands of the defending champions in Limbe, Cameroon last night. Nigeria will face Cameroon in the final on Tuesday.
After a 5-0 drubbing of Egypt at the weekend, hopes were high that Banyana could record a rare win against the Super Falcons. The South Africans produced a solid display from the get-go. They piled on the pressure and created promising opportunities, but failed to convert these into goals. Goalkeeper Andile Dlamini was worth gold. Her safe hands prevented the Nigerians from scoring on numerous occasions. South Africa came close in the 35th minute. Leandra Smeda found the back of the net, but her goal was disallowed. She was judged to be offside. Nigeria finally took the lead in the 53rd minute. Desiree Operanotsi scored from a free kick after a foul by Banyana's Bambanani Mbane. The South Africans came close to levelling matters in the second half, but the Nigerian defence prevailed, denying South Africa a place in the final for the third time.
We said that we needed to start really well, which we did. And sometimes you need a bit of luck to go your way. Unfortunately, it didn't go our way. We created opportunities, and once again had 2 shots cleared of the line, and on another day it would have gone in. And we knew if we had scored, we would have won the game. But credit to Nigeria. That's what champions are made of.
The players were disappointed but happy with their efforts.
In order for us to win games, we needed to score goals, and it's just unfortunate that those chances, we couldn't bury them. But other than that, we're very positive with the results that we got. Even though we lost, we played a good game.
I think we were better than Nigeria. We're playing better than them, and we try our best. And it was a good game though, but unfortunately we couldn't score the goals that we wanted.
Banyana will take on Ghana in a playoff for the bronze medal on Friday. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
Staying with football news, but bringing it back home, SuperSport United leapfrogged Bidvest Wits after beating them 2-0 in an absolute premiership match played last night in Nelspruit. It was Wits' first defeat in league matches this season, and they still have two more games in hand. Meanwhile, 10-man Kaizer Chiefs were happy to register a draw against the high-flying log leaders Cape Town City at the FNB Stadium.
Kaizer Chiefs were the quickest out of the starting blocks as Michel Kativairo deflected George Malulega's shot into the back of the net inside the first 3 minutes of the match.
Properly and a goal early on for Kaizer Chiefs, and Chiefs have the lead. Kativairo seems to be the man who claims it.
Amakhosi seemed to be in control of the match before Sibusiso Khumalo recklessly plunged into Thamsanqa Mkhize, and the referee Victor Gomez sent him for an early shower. Coach Eric Tinkler brought on Matthew Sim to add some firepower up front just before halftime. And in the second half, the Australian attacking midfielder scored the equalizer for City. The match finished 1-1.
Deflection. He's got 2 in 2 games against Kaizer Chiefs. He's got their number.
You have to be opportunistic when you get those chances. And the essence of playing with one man down is to stay very disciplined and very strong mentally, which I thought to an extent we did. Results, not a happy performance and commitment. Yeah, you feel they tried their best, and then we have to keep moving on without any complaints.
We looked extremely lethargic in the first half, and obviously I was not impressed with that. Second half, comedy of errors from us, Playing against 10, you need to spread the ball wide. We're still trying to penetrate through the middle, and that's the frustrating part. For me, this is more like 2 points lost than 1 point gained, to be honest.
SuperSport United seem to have found a happy hunting ground in Mpumalanga. After a scrappy first half against Bidvest Vet, Clayton Daniels opened their account midway through the second. 5 minutes later, Amatsatsantsa won a free kick outside the box. Thabo Mnyamane stepped up and cemented 3 points for SuperSport.
Thabo Mnyamane! Oh, click, bang!
They had far too much momentum, knocking balls in the box that we had to defend from all angles, and I think we just did a better job the second half of defusing it, having better attacking play and being a threat to them so that they were struggling to get out at us, and I think it was just much better second half.
And I said if we score first we'll win the game, and then the first goal, I don't know, it looked like there was a lot of pulling and pushing, and the ball's bouncing in the 6-yard box, couldn't believe it. Second goal was world-class goal, we can't do anything about that. But in saying that, we should have been up comfortably, no danger.
Chippa United travelled to KwaZulu-Natal to face Maritzburg United. The Falo Davids-led side took the lead in the second half as Delon Mekua capitalized on goalkeeper Daniel Akepei's mistake. However, with 15 minutes left on the clock, Thembinkosi Lodge scored the equalizer for Chippa. The teams circled for a share of the spoils. Mtutuzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Let's have a quick look at what's coming up tonight. First up, let's have a summary of last night's results, though. Just to remind you, a 1-1 draw for Cape Town City and Kaizer Chiefs right there. And then we had SuperSport United beating Bidvest Wits 2-0. Then you'll see also that Maritzburg United 1-0 draw with Chippa United. Tonight at 7:30 p.m. In Cape Town is Mamelodi Sundowns against Ajax Cape Town. A cracker of a match we're expecting there. Golden Arrows up against Polokwane State and Free State Stars Platinum Stars. Baroka FC against Orlando Pirates, and some people are talking about how Pirates might be regretting letting go of a certain coach earlier last year. Now Highlands Park will be up against Bloem Celtic, this at the Makulong Stadium. Right, that's where we leave it. We'll be back in a few minutes' time at the top of the hour with more news, more analysis. You're watching Newsroom. Do not go anywhere.
1100 hours Central Africa time on this Wednesday, the last day of November the 30th. This is Newsroom, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the final hour. You'll be with us until 12 o'clock, and as you know, we're broadcasting live from our Auckland Park studios here in Johannesburg to the rest of the African continent. Now, today we're looking at the launch of a major study to test the efficacy of a vaccine to prevent HIV infection. Question of the day, we're asking you, what are your hopes for an HIV vaccine, for the HIV vaccine trial? Now, it's on your screen right now. You can let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. But we're also conducting a poll on yesterday's ANC NEC outcomes, and we are asking, were you satisfied by the ANC's NEC outcomes? That's the poll. Let's see if we have the poll up there and running and see what we have. Currently, 246 votes, 21 hours to go, people. 14% only are saying yes. 86% of people are saying no. The question that we want to pose is, why is that? Are you dissatisfied with what came out of that? Let us know. Also on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page. But first, let's take a look at your news headlines. The groundbreaking HIV vaccine trial will test the effectiveness of a vaccine to prevent HIV are currently underway all over the country. We'll cross to our reporter shortly to find out what's happening in Durban. President Jacob Zuma praises Fidel Castro's role in the liberation of Africa against colonialism in Cuba, in Havana. And Brazil to begin with investigations into an air crash that killed over 70 people and a Brazilian soccer team. Those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening in the final hour. Kendall?
The final hour it is, Elvis. The same story, though, is still top of our minds, that air crash out in Colombia, the worst in Colombia's history over the last 20 years. So it's something massive out in South America, hearing an entire team, journalists and crew, going down in that fateful crash 2 nights ago. Now, this is what else we've got for you in the sports today.
No, she's not. Blasted straight through. And it's 1-0 to Nigeria.
Try as they might, Banyana failed to advance past Nigeria in the AFCON semi-final last night as they fall to a sublime free kick in this 57th minute.
Unfortunately, it didn't go our way. We created opportunities, and once again had 2 shots cleared of the line, and on another day it would have gone in.
In the Absa Premiership, Cape Town City FC come back from behind to hold Kaizer Chiefs to a 1-0 draw at the FNB Stadium.
Now the turn. Oh, goal from Summit. Took a massive deflection. He's got 2 in 2 games against Kaizer Chiefs.
And condolences continue to pour in from around the world for the families of the Chapo Kapowense team that perished in the air crash yesterday. We'll have more detail for you at 11:35. Be sure to stick around for it. For now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. Education and awareness remains key weapons in the battle against the HIV/AIDS epidemic. This is the view of some people living with the virus in the Eastern Cape ahead of the World AIDS Day celebrations on the 1st of December. Our SABC reporter, Vuya Poti, spoke to one of them.
Africa has the biggest and most high-profile HIV epidemic in the world, with an estimated 7 million people living with the virus. It also has the largest antiretroviral treatment program globally. Thandiswa has been living with HIV for 15 years now. She says what helped her was to accept the disease and educate herself more about it.
This is not the disease that it is the end of the story, or you're not going to be with the people and the people will chase you away. And as I told the people about my status, people coming to me and ask how you survive, because we don't see you become sick. You become big and you beautiful. Everything was fine in me, and I have a lot of friends. There are a lot of people who have become ill and they died because they act as if they accepted disease, but they didn't.
Although government health centres such as clinics do provide education on safe sex and the prevention of HIV, Thandiswa says things were tough back when she was diagnosed HIV positive in 2009.
Then I go to the clinic, and it was long time because it is the time that you take the blood and you wait for a week. After a week, you come and take your results, and the results said I'm HIV positive. And I couldn't believe because I don't see nothing in my body.
But her life went through an emotional turmoil from 2009. Her partner passed away and she had to deal with stigma and mocking by some in her community.
The first person who attacked me about my status is the person who knows the family that I was having a relationship with the boyfriend in Youth Lake. And then we were busy drinking. It was a nice day, it was hot. And there's nothing was changing in my life beside of drinking. But even that drinking, I tried to stop it after I accept my status. But the lady, she was attacking me that I was joking with the lady. The lady said, I'm not that boyfriend of yours who passed away because of HIV.
Thandiswa says she is now doing better. For the past few years, she has been happy with a strong family support for her and her 2 children. She is thankful for the education she has been able to access through radio, the clinics and the general awareness programs, which have helped her to live a better life.
I heard in the news, on the radio, on TV, all that stuff that there is nevirapine.
Yes.
So I use nevirapine, I go to the clinic, I do all that process to get the child. So I have that child. She's 11 years now.
Statistics show that the country is still recording 290,000 new HIV infections and 450,000 new TB infections annually. Thandiswa plans to use her story to raise awareness in her community about living with HIV.
I want to be a social worker before I was at school.
Oh, okay.
So I failed grade 12 most. So I upgrade my subject now in Midland College.
Okay.
I'm doing the OA Payan. Then, if I pass the London, the course, I try to be a social worker because there are a lot of people I can help them.
Her advice to those who may be struggling to accept and live with the virus, she says, the trick is just to live a balanced life.
The only thing that makes you become not to be ill, use a condom. And you accept most the disease that you have.
Yes.
You must use the condom. You must go to your clinic. If you have a treatment, you must take your treatment. Nothing else. That is why I'm surviving.
The government remains concerned with the high rate of infections among young women between the ages of 14 and 25. Thandiswa says education and awareness needs to be increased to target these young people. Yvette Boti, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
Now we'll see if we can connect to our report in a short while in Durban to find out what's happening with that clinical trials that's currently that's kicked off today. Meanwhile, the ANC president, Jacob Zuma, is staying put. Now, this is the message from the ANC NEC after the weekend's calls for him to resign. The calls were made by some members of the NEC at its meeting over the weekend. The ANC has also reiterated that those who called for the president's head will not be purged.
Following robust, honest and candid and times difficult discussion, the NEC did not support the call for the president to step down.
The announcement many have been waiting for. The ANC meeting, which is the highest decision-making body, had a heated debate on the future of its president. The reasons for the call: the party's loss in the August local elections, the Nkandla saga, and the recent release of the state of capture report by the former public protector.
So there was no vote of no confidence that there was a call for the president to step down. Now, that call ultimately was not acceded to.
And an assurance to NEC members who led the charge.
It is debated by ministers and non-ministers. Everybody talks on this matter. Almost everybody in that NEC spoke on this matter, I can tell you that. So to limit it to ministers is actually bordering on mischief.
A message to opposition parties which plan to call for another motion of no confidence against the president.
Bring it on if the EFF wants to. Let's see what happens. There are no ghosts that we're chasing around. We believe that every enemy of our revolution has a right to do whatever they wish to do to destabilize or try to destabilize the revolution, but we are equally determined for them not to succeed.
Turning to the rating agencies, the party says it will not try to appease them.
They must rate us on the work we do that we think are in the best interest of the country.
With that out of the way, the party will now focus on preparations for the January 8 statement, which outlines the program of action for the year.
The ANC also dismissed reports that some ministers were planning to resign en masse after failing to convince President Zuma to resign as president of the country. The ANC described the reports as corridor talk. Muntlanyani Dipoko, SABC News, Johannesburg.
We join the progressive forces of the world in mourning and celebrating the life of this renowned internationalist and anti-imperialist who selflessly supported the struggles of the oppressed and exploited.
Nos sumamos a las fuerzas progresistas de todo el mundo al guardar luto y a celebrar la vida de este internacionalista reconocido y de este antiimperialista, quien respaldó de manera desinteresada las luchas de los oprimidos y los explotados.
The passing of Comrade Fidel is a painful loss for South African people.
La muerte del compañero Fidel es una pérdida dolorosa para el pueblo de Sudáfrica.
He stood with us in solidarity, supporting our struggle, including the international campaign to isolate the apartheid regime.
Él estuvo al lado nuestro en solidaridad y respaldó la lucha, incluida la campaña internacional para aislar al régimen del apartheid.
We knew that we could rely on Cuba, a trusted friend and ally of the oppressed.
Sabíamos que podíamos confiar en Cuba, un amigo y un aliado de los oprimidos.
Significantly, the deep and undying special relationship between Cuba and South Africa was cemented by the blood of heroic Cuban soldiers who paid the supreme sacrifice for their belief in anti-imperialism, freedom, and justice.
La relación especial, profunda e imperecedera entre Cuba y Sudáfrica se cimentó con la sangre de los soldados cubanos heroicos, quienes pagaron el sacrificio supremo por su convicción en el antiimperialismo, la libertad y la justicia.
The mission was also to liberate Namibia and boost the liberation efforts in South Africa between 1987 and 1988.
Esta misión comprendió también liberar a Namibia y fomentar los esfuerzos de liberación en Sudáfrica entre 1987 y 1988.
It was this engagement that led to the epic Battle of Cuito Cunaval in 1988, in which the Cubans forced the South African racist apartheid regiment into a humiliating and devastating retreat.
Now that was President Jacob Zuma, who's among international leaders who have addressed a huge rally in the Cuban capital, Havana, in honor of the legendary Fidel Castro. The iconic leader, as you know, died last Friday at the age of 90. El Comandante. Let's now come back home to stories making news headlines right here. And of course, we're talking about that vaccine trial. Remember, there's also a question that we pose to you. We want to find out from you whether or not you think that this vaccine trial will really make a difference and if we will be able to get that vaccine going. There's the question on your screen. What are your hopes for this HIV vaccine trial that started today? Send us your comments on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page. Let's go now to Brazil, where family members of some of the 71 people killed when a plane carrying Brazilian soccer team, Chapecoense, crashed in Colombia gathered at the team's Arena Conda on November the 29th as they wept together. Family members were joined by the fans of the club who came out to mourn together at the team's home. Medical doctors and mental health specialists were at hand at the club to attend to family members of the victims. The plane mountainside near Medellin on Monday night as the team flew to face Atlético Nacional for the Copa Sudamérica, which is the South America's equivalent of the Europa League. In addition to the players, coaches and staff, 21 journalists had been on board the plane to cover the match. Now, a number of the city's free Wi-Fi hotspots have been disconnected here in Johannesburg and Braamfontein. The Deputy Minister of Telecommunications and Postal Services, Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize, understanding how important this service is for people, especially students and the youth, has expressed a shock regarding this matter as it goes against the mandate of the department, which is to connect all communities. Joining us now at our Cape Town studios in Parliament is the Deputy Minister of Telecommunications and Postal Services, Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize. Deputy Minister, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning.
First and foremostly, tell us, are you aware that the Wi-Fi hotspots have been connected in Johannesburg?
Well, we have seen reports talking to the fact that in some areas in Johannesburg, the Wi-Fi hotspots have been disconnected, and we have expressed our shock and have asked the officials to visit the municipality in the surrounding area just to establish the extent and the nature and the thinking behind these disconnections.
Do you know the reasons behind the disconnection, Professor?
You see, I think there's a difficulty here because our mandate as a Department of Telecoms and Postal Services is to create information society and is to ensure that we deploy technologies, including the wireless networks, to strategic buildings and centers where especially the youth tends to concentrate for education, for entrepreneurship. So whether it's political changes that have brought about this, it's not clear. But whoever's doing it is really missing a point completely in terms of the mandate of the department and where the country is, that to fight our triple challenge, ICTs have information communication technologies through Wi-Fi, internet, access to internet, have been identified as a vehicle through which we can step up our efforts in creating an inclusive development agenda.
Now, as the Telecommunications and Postal Services, are you suggesting that you were not consulted on the process? Deputy Minister, can you still hear me? Deputy Minister, are you still there? Well, it seems like we've lost the Deputy Minister there for a second. That was the Deputy Minister of Telecommunications and Postal Services, Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize, in our parliamentary studios. We're not too sure what happened there. We'll see if we can just find out a little bit more about that. But remember that we'll continue with our question on the poll, as well as on the question you can send us your comments. But let's take a break right now, and we'll be back right after that.
Animation, virtual reality and games. We have all of that and other technology and social media news.
I've got the full version of the game at home, so I play it a lot at home.
We also tell you how Africans are using tech to improve their lives.
We have to close the digital gap.
So join us on Network for your African technology and social media news. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
What causes Parkinson's? How common is it?
your research show that it's slightly more prevalent in men.
Yeah.
It's equally affected at women as well.
Yeah.
And all races can be affected with Parkinson's. There is no such thing as one race is more prevalent than the other.
Parkinson's disease is the disorder of degeneration of the neurons, therefore exposes one to have those unwanted movements of the body.
I lead my normal life. I wake up in the morning, I do some exercises here and there.
It's just a movement disorder. It's going to affect how he lives his life. And I think as a family, it's just helped us get a little bit closer and surround him.
Catch Health Talk every Saturday from 9 to 10 with Dr. Silo Mutawo.
Well, let's see if we can get back to the Deputy Minister of Telecommunication and Postal Services, Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize, who's in our parliamentary studios. Deputy Minister, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Ah, that's wonderful.
I can hear you clearly.
Yes. Now we can continue our discussion. By the way, we ended off by the availability of this Wi-Fi hotspots. How crucial, you said it's part of the mandate, but how crucial do you think these Wi-Fi hotspots are, especially for students in Johannesburg?
Well, you would have seen recently the statistics of unemployed youth. So what we are using the technologies for is to ensure that students are able to register for educational purposes, but also that they get comfortable, we e-skill them, because jobs in most instances, entry points, they need to have basic computer skills, but generally to access opportunities either in institutions of higher learning or workplace, really are determined by how competent a person is in technology. So in poor access to technology these days will really be an unfortunate move for the metro, because it will mean it's closing doors to young people and really frustrating their future.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sure that those that don't have access to any electronic devices or even a network find it exceptional that at least they have access to it. But those students that want to use the Wi-Fi hotspot services, there were some concerns that the Wi-Fi hotspots does not really give them the bandwidth that they need. Is there something in the pipeline that will probably assist the system with that?
You see, the ones that are sponsored by government, we keep on saying we should limit access, because sometimes other young people will go there to download music and so on. If it's utilized strategically for doing homework, for registering online, for communication, and for sending CVs, looking for opportunities. And of course, we are talking to our companies as well to look at their universal service obligation, and to increase access to data and make it affordable. And I think we are moving closer towards the solution. The most important thing for us as government, though, for instance, as a national department, we put aside even money where we said we're not going to wait for the private sector. We said to metros, apply and create Wi-Fi hotspots. Tshwane was leading during Ramakgopa's time, and Johannesburg followed, Ekurhuleni and other, and then that's what we think government should do, to be in the forefront of this revolution, because it's our sole responsibility to ensure that our young people are given an opportunity so that in future they take full responsibility, equipped with the skills that are required for their progress and development.
And just lastly, then, Deputy Minister, seeing that the Wi-Fi hotspots is off right now, are you in conversation with the municipality of Johannesburg, and how will you make sure that the Wi-Fi hotspots come back again, or is there alternative solutions to it?
You know, we have what is called ICT infrastructure, where all municipalities participate. That's why I think maybe it's a change of leadership in some of the metros. So our senior officials driving ICT infrastructure, we've instructed them to visit all of them to assess the degree of connectivity. Where there are challenges, it's our responsibility to partner with those municipalities and to ensure that they have adequate number of Wi-Fi hotspots. And of course, the provincial leadership as well, to be alerted to the challenge, as we have asked all of them, all the provinces to budget adequately for connecting young people in communities, especially those who don't have 5 computers and access to internet at home. As government, we believe we can take them forward to a point where they'll be able to stand on their own.
Deputy Minister, thank you so much for your time and joining us in our parliamentary studios.
Thank you.
That was the Deputy Minister of Telecommunications and Postal Services, Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize, joining us in our parliamentary studios. The National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, has issued a call to all current matric learners who have not applied for the 2017 year financial aid to do so before the applications close by the end of business today. Now, the scheme has received a very low number of 2017 funding applications since applications opened in August. There are currently more than 600,000 learners sitting for matric exams across the country this year, and most of the applications received are from current university students. The National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS spokesperson Kagiso Mamabolana joins us in our studio to talk about their preparations for 2017. A very good morning to you, Kagiso, and welcome.
Morning. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Mr. Mamabola, first and foremost, tell us how many applications did you receive from matriculants for next year, 2017, thus far?
Well, we're still counting. You'd recall that the cutoff date is midnight today, and so far we have over 350,000 applicants that have came through our website, and added to that, there's about 98,000 that came through the manual system, that is through fax, through post, and through email. And we're still counting. We still do have about 64,000 that are still incomplete, which we do hope that by midnight or by tomorrow, those would be completed.
Now, how many applications were you expected for 2017?
Well, our numbers really are heavily reliant on university enrollment figures. You'd recall that we fund students that are admitted at university. So in a year, NSFAS would fund about 400,000 students. That includes first year and returning students. So based on the number of students that have been admitted to study in 2017, and they have applied and qualified for NSFAS, NSFAS will fund those. There wouldn't be students that are sent back home because there's no funding.
Now, what do you think could be the contributing factors for the current crop of matric learners not applying for funding for next year?
Well, when we did the analysis yesterday, we actually realized that everyone just waited for the last minute. The number on our website yesterday doubled. In fact, today it's even worse, and we really are contemplating as to what do we need to do. We need to extend the closing date because the system is getting much more slower and slower every minute because of the rush. But I think the contributing factor, if one has to really speculate, could be that because of the fees must fall movement, our institutions were shut down, which were very, very instrumental in helping us collecting manual application and mobilizing grade 12 learners and schools and coordination and so forth. And when we noticed that actually that applications that comes from rural areas are very poor. We then had to rush, speak to NYDA, speak to the Department of Social Development, speak to some of municipalities and some private sector to say, open your centers so that grade 12 learners can apply. But also by large is really this thing of saying we'll wait for the last minute and really apply, or hoping that an application date will be extended.
Could we take this perhaps as the low level of responses, perhaps the sort of a vote of no confidence in NSFAS, you think, or is that a bit far-fetched?
Well, I think that is a bit far-fetched. I'll tell you why. Because previously NSFAS used to rely on universities to receive and assess applications for NSFAS. It is for the first time now that we are doing it ourselves. We are cutting the middleman. And I could imagine that the process has changed, and grade 12 learners, sometimes they get confused as to, do they go directly to NSFAS offices or do they go to universities? So I think that could have added into the low number of applications received.
Now, you did mention that there might be the possibility of extending. When are you going to take that decision?
We will take that decision this afternoon. We are meeting at 2. To look at the all numbers of applications received, but also anticipate the number of applications that are still coming through post office, because obviously they would not reach us all by today. And what do we do? Do we just close? But I think the critical factor here is that if we delay in closing the application, we will not have sufficient time to assess all the applications received. We require closure of the system in order to start evaluating. And the evaluation means verification of income for every applicant. Even all the supporting documents submitted, we still need to go back to them and say, your ID is missing, your affidavit is missing, and that requires a lot of work. And that's why NSFAS took a decision that during this December, will not be closing, it will be business as usual.
Mm-hmm. What innovations has US NSFAS done for 2016-2017 in order to avoid the shortcomings of previous years, like, for instance, late payment to service providers, NSFAS inability to collect funds from previous students that have been assisted?
As we speak, we have deployed our officials throughout the country. What they are doing, they are helping our merchant. Merchant would be service providers that assist our students with accommodation, food, books. We are embodying them into the new system so that come January, our students can go anywhere where they want to purchase anything and use their cell phone vouchers to purchase that. That requires onboarding of merchants. So we're still working on that as we speak. Mm-hmm. And of course, we are also going to be dispatching teams of officials in January at every university to help those that are coming through the university to do registration. You recall that our new system then requires our NSFAS students not to pay registration up front, which means that in January, universities, when they open next year, must allow our NSFAS students to register without paying any kind of amount. But they would require to tap into our system and look and verify if their students are funded. That's why we are deploying our officials to man those systems at each and every university. And come to issues of collecting outstanding debt that is owed to us. We're actually working very hard to intensify that program. In our analysis, it's about 14 billion that can be recovered, and about 70% of that is in the private sector. And people that are employed in private sector are not paying, and we are making a call to a private sector to say, when we come knocking at your door as NSFAS, allow us, when we give you a database to look at people that are funded by NSFAS that you have employed, allow us to do so, because it will help us to actually generate more funding to fund more students. SARS has allowed us to actually request non-financial information that is very, very latest, that will make us easier to make contact with all our debtors. Even those that are self-employed or they are on a contract, we will be able to trace them now due to the latest information received.
I like your work because I think that is where the crutch of the matter is, where students have to pay back what they have been funded for. Larson, but we're running out of time, but just briefly, your message to matriculants for today.
Our message is that if you cannot be able to apply online, please fill in the manual application form. Do not be stuck on the online system. Fill in the manual application form, attach all the supporting documents, and send it through email to apply@nsfas.org.za.
I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That was the National Student Financial Aid Scheme NSFAS spokesperson, Kagiso Mamabola, urging matriculants to apply today. Don't wait. If the system crashes and you can't get it online, do it with a pen and paper. It works.
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the man who takes the party from zero to hero, from bland to grand, from average to, well, to way above average. The guy who toots the party train horn and says, "All aboard!" You are indeed a party comrade, and we salute you with a bottle of Chivas Regal 12-year-old blended Scotch whiskey, plus 2 glasses for just $279.99, exclusive to Tops at Spa.
Resumed U.S. drone strike in the south of the country has killed 3 Al-Qaeda suspects.
Death toll in Yemen's 18-month-old civil war now stands at about 10,000.
People get killed or die and are actually buried before they're recorded, and we don't have a way of recording that, but we know the numbers are much higher.
Water restrictions are to be imposed on villages in and around the Nkomazi municipality.
Pumps can't pump the water because there's no water in a river, and if the water is coming back, then it's full of mud.
Those who can pray and those who can do any miracle to make sure that we've got enough rain, give it a try.
Welcome back. We start off this sporting bulletin with some sad news. Wheelchair tennis star Thando Hlatshwayo, South African former world #2 junior, has passed away at the young age of 20. Hlatshwayo, who hails from Paul Petersburg in KwaZulu-Natal, lost her battle against meningitis early on Tuesday morning after a very short and unexpected illness. Hlatshwayo took up wheelchair tennis in 2009, played her first tournament in April 2010 in East London. In just 2 years in the sport, she represented the country in the ITF Junior Champ Mechelen in Belgium. The 20-year-old, ever smiling Hlatshwayo, also represented South Africa in Russia, Great Britain, Sri Lanka and Mauritius. And may her soul rest in peace. Now move on to other sporting stories that are making headlines today. South African women's soccer team coach Desiree Ellis is proud of her charges. This despite their semi-final loss to Nigeria in the 2016 Africa Women's Cup of Nations. Banyana suffered a disappointing 1-0 loss, this at the hands of the defending champions in Limbe, Cameroon last night. Nigeria will face Cameroon in the final on Saturday.
After a 5-0 drubbing of Egypt at the weekend, hopes were high that Banyana could record a rare win against the Super Falcons. The South Africans produced a solid display from the get-go. They piled on the pressure and created promising opportunities, but failed to convert these into goals. Goalkeeper Andile Dlamini was worth gold. Her safe hands prevented the Nigerians from scoring on numerous occasions. South Africa came close in the 35th minute. Leandra Smeda found the back of the net, but a goal was disallowed. She was judged to be offside. Nigeria finally took the lead in the 53rd minute. Desiree Operanotsi scored from a free kick after a foul by Banyana's Bambanani Mbane. The South Africans came close to levelling matters in the second half, but the Nigerian defence prevailed, denying South Africa a place in the final for the third time.
We said that we needed to start really well, which we did. And sometimes you need a bit of luck to go your way.
Unfortunately, it didn't go our way. We created opportunities and once again had 2 shots cleared of the line, and on another day it would have gone in. And we knew if we had scored, we would have won the game. But credit to Nigeria. That's what champions are made of.
The players were disappointed but happy with their efforts.
In order for us to win games, we needed to score goals, and it's just unfortunate that those chances, we couldn't bury them. But other than that, we're very positive with the result that we got. Even though we lost, we played a good game.
I think we were better than Nigeria. We're playing better than them, and we try our best. And it was a good game though, but unfortunately we couldn't score the goals that we wanted.
Banyana will take on Ghana in a playoff for the bronze medal on Friday. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
The joys and heartbreak of sport, all encompassed in one little package. Now, SuperSport United leapfrogged Bidvest Wits after beating them 2-0 in an Absa Premiership match played last night in Nelspruit. It was Wits' first defeat in league matches this season, and they still have 2 games in hand. Meanwhile, 10-man Kaizer Chiefs were happy to register a draw against high-flying blog leaders Cape Town City at the FNB Stadium.
Kaizer Chiefs were the quickest out of the starting blocks as Michel Kativairo deflected George Malulega's shot into the back of the net inside the first 3 minutes of the match.
Properly and a goal early on for Kaizer Chiefs, and Chiefs have the lead. Kativairo seems to be the man who claims it.
Amakhosi seemed to be in control of the match before Sibusiso Khumalo recklessly plunged into Thamsanqa Mkhize, and the referee Victor Gomez sent him for an early shower. Coach Eric Tinkler brought on Matthew Sim to add some firepower up front just before halftime. And in the second half, the Australian attacking midfielder scored the equalizer for City. The match finished 1-1.
He's got 2 in 2 games against Kaizer Chiefs. He's got their number.
You have to be opportunistic when you get those chances. And the essence of playing with 1 man down is to stay very disciplined and very strong mentally, which I thought to an extent we did. Results, not a happy performance and commitment. Yeah, you feel they tried their best, and then we have to keep moving on without any complaints.
We looked extremely lethargic in the first half, and obviously I was not impressed with that. Second half, comedy of errors from us, Playing against 10, you need to spread the ball wide. We're still trying to penetrate through the middle, and that's the frustrating part. For me, this is more like 2 points lost than 1 point gained, to be honest.
SuperSport United seemed to have found a happy hunting ground in Mpumalanga. After a scrappy first half against Bidvest Wits, Clayton Daniels opened their account midway through the second. 5 minutes later, Amatsatsantsa won a free kick outside the box. Thabo Mnyamane stepped up and cemented 3 points for SuperSport.
Thabo Mnyamane! Oh, click, bang!
They had far too much momentum, knocking balls in the box that we had to defend from all angles, and I think we just did a better job the second half of defusing it, having better attacking play and being a threat to them so that they were struggling to get out at us, and I think it was just much better second half.
And I said if we score first we'll win the game, and then the first goal, I don't know, it looked like there was a lot of pulling and pushing, and the ball's bouncing in the 6-yard box, couldn't believe it. Second goal was world-class goal, we can't do anything about that. But in saying that, we should have been up comfortably, no danger.
Chippa United travelled to KwaZulu-Natal to face Maritzburg United. The Falo Davids-led side took the lead in the second half as Delon Mekua capitalized on goalkeeper Daniel Akepei's mistake. However, with 15 minutes left on the clock, Thembinkosi Lodge scored the equalizer for Chippa. The teams circled for a share of the spoils. Mtutuzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Well, there you have it. Just behind me, you can see just a quick summary of the results from last night. That 1-1 draw for Chiefs, the 2-0 win for SuperSport United, and Maritzburg United and Chippa drawing 1-1. Tonight, we've got a whole host of matches in Cape Town, starting off with Sundowns visiting Ajax Cape Town, Golden Arrows against Polokwane City, the Kings, Olitini, and then Free State Stars. They play Platinum Stars in Goble Park. The new Peter Bokama Stadium is where Orlando Pirates will be visiting Baraka FC, trying to wrest 3 points from them. Highlands Park, they host Bloem Celtic at the Makulong Stadium. All matches kicking off at 7:30 p.m. Now the world of football is in mourning after Colombia's worst air disaster in 2 decades killed all but 3 players from the Brazilian football team, Chapecoense. En route to the biggest game in their history, their manager had said, "Were he to die now, he'd be a happy man." Prophetic words if there ever were any. Let's have a quick look at the dream road that had led them to the finals of the Copa Sudamericana, South America's equivalent of the CAF Confederations Cup or the Europa League. Now, Barcelona superstar Neymar Jr., who started his career in the Brazilian league, tweeted that Brazilian clubs had announced that they'll send loan players to Chapecoense without fees and that the club was to be exempted from relegation for 3 years. Now, here's the last that many would see of their favorite team as they sat on that fateful flight. Not agreeing with us at this present moment. It would have been good to see some of the players. I think the goalkeeper sending a message out to all of his fans and telling them about how they're on their way to that final in Medellin against Atlético Nacional. But that's where we're going to leave it for now with that. We've got some comments that you've made on social media. And there we go. Is it happening? We're going to go with comments right now.